Almost 3 years ago, the planet Earth went through a major shakeup, and the animals and plants living there started evolving in wild ways. To keep things from going off the rails and to keep the peace, humans discovered they could control monsters. These awakened individuals become known as monster trainers. Or at least that's what this fatty woman told us. She wraps up the lesson by reminding everyone that everything they have learned today will be on the test. Right at that moment, the school bell rings, signaling the end of the class. Before everyone heads out, she also gives a shout out about the monster taming exam tomorrow and suggests that anyone interested should come check it out with their parents. As the students head out and the city streets get busy, we meet Gao Peng, an 18-year-old from Chang'an Third High School. He's got dreams of becoming a monster trainer, but lately he's been stuck dealing with these super annoying system prompts that keep bugging him. He doesn't bother paying much attention to what the system prompt is saying and figures it might just be a hallucination from all the recent stress. As he heads up the staircase, he spots a spider chilling on the steps, and sure enough, the system window pops up again, showing the stats of this monster. When he sees this notification, he's convinced these prompts are definitely real. He then remembers that this spider is apparently a striped gray disc spider raised by Granny Chen, and he also recalls his Chubster teacher saying it's a relatively gentle creature. But it seems that's not the case. The spider suddenly leaps at him to attack, and he quickly ducks and starts climbing the stairs while frantically calling out for Granny Chen. The spider throws a web at him, and he narrowly avoids getting tangled up. As he runs around, he looks back to find the spider has disappeared, only to have it pop up right in front of him. In that frantic situation, his eyes catch the system notification again, and he notices that this monster is weak against fire. Without wasting a second, he pulls out a lighter, sets it on fire, and throws it at the spider with all his might. The lighter hits the spider, causing a small explosion that starts burning the critter alive. But his face quickly goes pale again when he realizes the fire is way too small to do any real damage, and the monster starts hopping around like crazy. Its shimmering eyes make it obvious that it's officially pissed off. Even the system notification flashes red, warning our MC that he's about to get screwed if he does not run. So he bolts, making a frantic dash towards the top floor, hoping to reach his apartment. His monster Dazi is still in the apartments, so he's sure he'll be safe once he gets inside. After scrambling up the stairs, he finally reaches his front door. But before he could enter, that monster had already closed in. In this desperate situation, he shouts his friend's name at the top of his lungs, and another creature promptly pops out from the front door and quickly smacks the oversized spider right where it hurts. The poor spider crashes to the ground, trembling in fear as this centipede-like creature stands tall beside our boy. The little critter quickly makes a hasty exit from the scene, and our hero dramatically adjusts his glasses, giving props to this Spidey for its speed and agility. We then learn that this centipede-like monster, whom our boy calls Da Z, is directly linked to his brain through a mind link, thanks to their contract. The monster transforms back into its less evolved, non-combat form and starts screaming right into our hero's head, complaining about not being fed properly. Apparently monsters have two different forms, and in their non-combat forms, they shrink in size to conserve energy and slowly heal from light injuries. Our boy gives his friend a little pat on the head and decides to feed him right away. As soon as he gets into the apartment, he heads straight for the kitchen. With the finesse of a seasoned chef, he twirls a sharp cleaver and slices the meat into perfectly even pieces. In just minutes, the nutritious meal is ready, and the aroma wafting from the bowl is so enticing that Dazi starts drooling and begins chomping down like a hungry beast. As he looks at his hungry buddy, he tells it to eat slowly. As he says this, another system prompt pops up before his eyes. There, we learn that Dazi is a purple-backed, yellow-clawed centipede monster. The stats are interesting, but what really blows our boy's mind is a little bar below the stats that shows he might be able to upgrade a normal grade monster to an excellent grade one. This discovery is so unreal that our boy hardly believes his eyes. You see, monsters are ranked from the lowest to the highest as normal grade, excellent grade, and perfect grade. These grades determine how much a monster can develop, with higher grades indicating greater potential. If he can upgrade Dazi to an excellent grade now, it means he could potentially reach a perfect grade in the future. The thought of achieving perfect grade, which is legendary and represents boss monsters, lights up a huge smile on our boy's face. He's so overjoyed that he starts hugging his little friend. But it looks like this clueless creature has no idea why its master is going wild with excitement over what seems like an ordinary moment. Our boy dives into the requirements for the excellent grade upgrade. First up is shade grass, which is easy to obtain. He can also buy thunderstruck wood without much trouble. But the lightning core crystal is a different story. A common 5-element core crystal already costs 8 credits, so a lightning core crystal, which is rarer, would set him back at least 10 credits, which is pretty pricey. He decides to think about it later. Since the New World government was established, they set up both Alliance dollars and Alliance credit points. Alliance credits are a high-class currency based on Alliance dollars, and 10,000 Alliance dollars can be exchanged for Alliance credit points. He also reflects on how, after his parents died in the accident, the country sent 20 credits as a pension, and he still has 11 credits left. It's barely enough to get the materials Dazi needs for the upgrade. He worries that if he uses those credits, they won't be able to live normal lives anymore. Once Dazi finishes its meal, it still seems hungry. Eventually, our boy ends up sharing his own food with the monster. As he sits there, he gets kinda dejected as he laments how tough it is to make money in this world. He's got the recipe for the upgrade, but just doesn't have the much needed cash to buy the materials. That's when he remembers the people known as monster breeders. His face lights up with excitement as he imagines himself working as a monster breeder to earn some hard cash. Apparently, the secrets to monster evolution have always been closely guarded by breeders, but since he can see the stats of monsters through his system, he's confident he could become the best monster breeder and earn as much money as he wants. He then recalls his teacher's words from today about the monster breeder examination happening tomorrow. He quickly pulls out his phone to see if he still has time for registration or not. Well, conveniently enough, he still has 3 minutes left. Without wasting any time, he smashes that yes button, and after a brief loading period, a congratulatory message flashes on the screen, stating that his application has been accepted. It instructs him to go to the Chang'an City Monster Breeder Division tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp to participate. The next day arrives, and before heading out for the exam, Gao Peng knocks on the neighbor's apartment. When the door creaks open, out steps an absolute beauty. She looks like she hasn't slept much, with sleepless eyes that suggest she had fun last night. She asks our boy the reason behind his visit. The guy, however, quickly averts his gaze to avoid eye contact with this stunner, and greets her with a simple good morning in a low tone. She asks him why he's visiting so early, and he explains that he's heading to the monster breeder exam and needs someone to look after Dazi for a couple of days. Not surprisingly, the girl quickly agrees, telling him not to worry about a thing and that he can go off to his exam without any concerns. He becomes pleased as he can take his test without worrying about Dazi. He bids her, Sister Tang Tang, the lovely neighbor, a good day and offers to treat her to dinner when he returns. When Gao Peng leaves, her expressions shift. She makes an irritated look and wonders how Gao Peng even received a contract for this ordinary, ugly centipede. When Dazi hears the lady say such derogatory things, he becomes enraged and attempts to leap on her. But she caresses his head and looks at him gently and sympathetically. She knew the old guy would be angry to learn about Dazi. As they enter the living area, she sees the call from the elderly man on her phone. After giving Dazi his meal, she sits down on the couch and answers the phone. She calls the elderly man as Old Jiang, anticipating that he won't become upset about what she is going to reveal. She explains that Gao Peng is a typical grade centipede with yellow claws and a purple back. Now the old man is enraged and yells over the call. He gets angry with her for not giving him guidance on the centipede since it has a low potential and is challenging to train. The beautiful lady took the phone away from her ear after hearing him yell. As she moves in the direction of the widow, she asks him how she could have accomplished it. Given that Gao Peng, his grandson, resembles him, she describes him as an old guy who is as obstinate as a mule and says that Gao Peng's daughter left the centipede for him. As she tousles her hair, she states that if it were up to her, she would eliminate the disobedient people and replace them with the obedient ones. Gazing out of the window, her voice was full of conviction, and she stated that the world is full of human talent, as if she had seen limitless potential in every person she met. Through the window, she sees Gao Peng running for his test and encourages the elderly man to do it his way and forget about Gao Peng. She assures him that Gao Peng will be safe as she will be around, and she hangs up on the call. The elderly man approaches his office's glass wall and looks outdoors, his hands crossed in the back. A female employee, who appears to be his secretary, enters and inquires as to if he has called for her. The old man remains in the same position, his face turned to the side with staring eyes. In a stern voice, he orders her to warn the experimental department that they only have 5 months to prove themselves, and that if they fail to do so, they will have no reason to continue operating. He also declares that he has no more time to spare and orders Li Hui to resolve the issues at the Qinghui branch within 7 months. He sways his hand, telling her to depart. She bows to him, seeming afraid, and tells him she will take care of these things immediately. Old Jiang, the elderly man, sees a picture of himself and his young grandson, Gao Peng. It was an image of Gao Peng's early years. He gave it a very loving and affectionate look. As he continued to gaze at it, his eyes grew softer and developed a feeling of tenderness and admiration. He promises that no one will be able to harm him and that he will find him within a year. There were gigantic buildings and a large crowd. One of the structures is the Chang'an City Monster Breed ER branch, where monster breeders assemble. Gao Peng's hand was clutching the straps of his backpack as he looked around at people. From the center of the crowd, Gao Peng hears someone call his name. He turns around to find a little lad in his school uniform. Gao Peng stared at the tiny boy, whose name was Li Xiaogong. He was there with his mother, Zhang Hong, and older sister, Li Hongdo. Gao Peng meets his mother. Later, she wonders if he came to watch the monster breeder exam. The little tad Li Xiaogong taunts her, claiming that she has failed 3 times and that they are coming to help her. Li Hongdu becomes upset and slaps her brother on the head with her purse, telling him that she believes their mother will pass the examination this time. A lump formed on his skull. He reminds her of all the times she shouldn't have hit him on the head. He believes that lowers his IQ. Among these things, Gao Peng informs them that he is there to take the monster breeder exam. The 3 of them are astonished to hear this, especially Li Xiaogong. Their mother pats Gao Peng's shoulder and encourages him by saying that young people should have a passion for monster breeding. She even mentions that the city may find their youngest breeder today. He hesitantly responds that he isn't good enough to be the youngest breeder, but he wants to try his luck. A short man with neck-length golden hair, a suit, and bodyguards overhears their chat. With a jealous and proud expression, he snaps his fingers and wonders how the city had such low requirements for monster breeders that anyone could pass the exam. He says this while pointing at Gao Peng. The little lad is furious and confronts him. His sister attempts to stop him. The short man repeats himself, claiming that young people are not fully mature enough to seek monsters. This is a joke. Gao Peng, with a serene attitude, claims that he would have been a high-class breeder if insults were the requirement. That short man was Wang Shu from Wang Corporations. He had failed 4 times consecutively, and therefore felt threatened by Gao Peng. When the building's gates opened, a tall, well-proportioned guy with long, bluish-gray hair emerged holding documents and commanding them to attend the exam in order. He was Feng Shu, the main examiner. As everyone enters the building and finds their spot, Feng Shu greets them and explains that the exam will be divided into 2 parts, a written portion and a practical portion. During the writing stage, authors must precisely describe the monster that will be portrayed on screen. With this, he believes it is appropriate to begin the exam. A video clip comes on the screen, featuring a dolphin-like structure with whitish-blue symbols on its head. When the tape is shown, everyone is horrified and begins to mumble because they don't know what species it is. Feng Shu claims that this was the first clip, and they have 20 minutes to write about the monster. Everyone starts chatting, saying it's too rapid to observe anything in such a short period of time. Few gave up and said they'd do harder next year. Feng Shu is enraged and declares that anyone who continues to chat will be considered cheating and thrown out of the exam hall. Wang Shu was in the test hall taking the exam. He smiles wickedly and says he was fortunate to receive the questions beforehand and is irritated by Gao Peng. Gao Peng, on the other hand, is pleased because he can see the monster and discovers that it is the storm dolphin, who enjoys light, soothing music, sunbathing, and eating squids and shrimps. He despises being disturbed by loud noises and is terrified of daring monster attacks. While writing about this dolphin, he imagines a forest with a large monster monkey whose eyes are red and jumping from tree to tree seeking bananas. He's a powerful monkey who enjoys climbing trees and eating bananas. He becomes easily upset and irritable, and he fears a poison-related monster attack. He notices a mantis again in the jungle, this time among the huge trees. It is a keen mantis that is fearless and enjoys fighting. It is a carnivore that consumes various insects and is afraid of fire. The alarm on Feng Shu's watch beeps, and it is already 10 o'clock. He tells everyone to stop writing, put their pen down, and submit their papers. A person arrives and gathers their papers, advising everyone not to leave the office because they will receive their results there. 1 hour later, the results are released, and they will mention the names of individuals who passed the exam. Feng Shu takes the names of those who have passed the exam, including Wang Shu and Zhang Hong. Wang Shu teases Gao Peng for not passing the exam and claims that he must have failed. Gao Peng believes that this is not feasible because he was correct in what he wrote and would not fail unless the system was at fault. Feng Shu asks which of them is Gao Peng, and Gao Peng stands up. Feng Shu is overjoyed and says that he received full marks on the test. He didn't expect somebody so young to perform so well. He referred to him as a child hero and applauded him. Hearing this, everyone in the exam hall wonders how he can be a full scorer when he appears like a high school student. Gao Peng turns to Wang Shu, smirks, and reminds him that he achieved full grades. Wang Shu is annoyed and envious of Gao Peng. The winners of the first round join Feng Shu, who gives his fingerprint authentication and opens a door. Gao Peng notices and wonders how huge this place is. This was the second step of their monster breeder exam, the practical test. As they enter the massive area, they notice that there are doors. Feng Shu informs them that the monsters given by the association can be found in these rooms behind the doors. To pass the examination, they must improve the grade of these monsters in 1 week, and the association will cover all fees associated with the monsters. However, there was one condition. If they failed to improve the monster, they would have to pay its market value. There were also additional rules, such as not being allowed to use excess materials, as doing so would result in failure. Hearing the terms and conditions has everyone on edge. Then comes Li Jin with a box. He's the branch examiner. He instructs everyone to come up and select a card that will determine which creature they will receive for the practical exam. Gao Peng believes that using this method will not allow him to predict the monster he will receive, and the monster breeder exam was as difficult as they claim. Everyone is in the queue, and Wang Shu smiles as if he wants Gao Peng to fail the exam. Gao Peng, on the other hand, wishes for a nice one and takes a gulp before drawing a card. Zhang Hong also pulls from the box and claims to have received room 6, prompting Gao Peng to respond with a smirk that he has received room 10. After everyone has chosen their rooms, they are instructed to look for them. Feng Shu announces the start of the practical examination. Gao Peng travels to room number 10, where he meets Zhou Yuan, the person in charge of that room, who says he will assist Gao Peng with whatever he wants. Gao Peng swipes the card and stares intently with crimson eyes. In the room behind bars, he sees a black monster with crimson eyes. Gao Peng reads the monster's details, which state that it is a red river ape of level 10 with a normal grade. This creature is ill, and its weakness is the yin characteristic. He is perplexed to learn about this monster, so he questions Zhou Yuan, the guy in authority, about what happened to the Red River apes. He discovers that because he was experimented on too many times, he was loaded with opposing energies and should have been removed. But because the association had no more monsters to put through the practical exam, they kept the Red River ape. While expressing this, Zhou Yuan recalls confronting Li Jin about putting the Red River ape on the monster test list. But, to his amazement, he was silenced by his remarks, which stated that he had his own ideas. Wang Shu and Li Jin conspired to deceive Gao Peng. According to Zhou Yuan, the Red River ape has survived so far because of its tenacity and perseverance, but it has a slim chance of improving. Because of what happened with the Red River ape, Zhou Yuan invites Gao Peng to come for the practical test the next time, and he promises to keep his written scores until then. Gao Peng takes a moment to look at the Red River ape and decides that he will choose it for his exam rather than give up. Hearing Gao Peng make his decision, Zhou Yuan wishes him success and exits the room. On the other side, the ape approaches Gao Peng in self-defense and recalls a period when he was experimented on and mistreated. This memory was not pleasant for him to recall, and he becomes enraged, grips the bars, and roars. As tears stream down his cheeks, Gao Peng kneels and rubs the ape's head with his palm, causing him to relax. He reassures him not to worry and that he is there to help him. Gao Peng's initial goal is to determine the Red River ape's needs and possessions. He then understands that he already has a normal evolution that eliminates yin poisons from the body, and that it is necessary to progress to the superior grade of river ape. Additionally, evolution follows two different routes. There are two types of evolution: normal evolution, which requires a lot of materials, and distorted pathological warping evolution, which requires very little. He chooses the distorted pathological warping evolution because it will fit his budget and require very little material. His eyes sparkle, and he realizes he must take the risk to enhance this monster. He selects the deformed pathological warping evolution, which displays all of the components he requires, including the black candlegrass, which he must feed 3 times per day for 3 days, and the elite ghoul-attributed core crystal, which must be fed after 3 days. Then they must combine the luminous powder, skull mushroom, and withering grass with sulfuric acid and bathe the Red River ape in it. He reads it, then passes the item list to Zhao Yang, who informs Gao Peng that these elements are poisonous and wonders if he is trying to murder the Red River ape by feeding him or upgrading him. Gao Peng responds that this is a serious sickness that requires treatment as potent as that. He then tells him to relax and that he understands what he's doing. Zhao Yuan glances at it, then underestimates him, believing that he is just another guy who obtains full marks on his written exam, but not on his practical exam. 3 days have passed. There are people who face major consequences for themselves. They have no idea what is wrong with their materials and monster breeding, why they aren't upgrading, and what went wrong. They believe it is incorrect because they fulfilled the material and measurement standards, but received no results. The Red River ape, on the other hand, has eaten everything indicated by the material and is reviewing its list to see how it affects him as well. The only task remaining for him was to soak in the sulfuric acid mixture. Gao Peng examines the key provided to him by Zhao Yuan. He informs him that this was the cage for the monsters provided by the association, but that the ape had been experimented on and tortured, so he must be cautious. Gao Peng realizes it's difficult to communicate with a monster who isn't in a blood contract, and that the Red River ape has its own perils. But at this stage, he has to have trust. He examines the key that was given to him carefully, and approaches the Red River ape, telling him that he will let him out on one condition. He must be obedient, and the key that was given to him was the key to the cage in which he was kept, and then Gao Peng tells him to come out. As soon as he orders him to come out, he comes and leaps on Gao Peng, and Gao Peng is scared because he thought he would be obedient, and then suddenly the Red River ape hugs him and places his head on his chest. Gao Peng caresses his head and tells him he can leave now. After all of this, he takes the Red River ape to the sulfuric acid mixture and instructs him to be a good boy and soak himself in there, promising that it will be very beneficial for him. To test the sulfuric acid mixture, the Red River ape pulls out a few fur from his body, and when he puts that into the sulfuric acid mixture, he sees that something comes out of it, and it's black. It's black energy. It comes out of it, and seeing that, the Red River ape is horrified and starts crying and shaking his head, stating he will not go into it. But Gao Peng says he can trust him and will give him the power to be brave, and he caresses his head, and the Red River ape looks at him with trust. The Red River ape is now prepared to immerse himself in the sulfuric acid mixture, and Gao Peng observes from behind how tragic it is to witness the ape go through this process once more, because he has been tortured and used extensively in the past. As soon as the ape does so, a lot of black smoke emerges, which causes Gao Peng to cough. The emergency siren then inevitably activates, and soon after, the people seated in the camera rooms have already called other staff to inform them that the fire alarm has been set off in room number 10, and that everyone must evacuate before the fire breaks out. The staff got the extinguisher and went to the location, but were wondering what was going on and thought it was caused by the young boy operating in room 10, which was Gao Peng. They all wanted to go and look together, so they just ran to room number 10, where we saw that Wang Shu was now grinning wickedly, and that he seemed to think the money he spent to fail Gaopeng would not be wasted. When the staff arrived, they noticed that there was only smoke instead of fire, and they wondered if it was a false alarm. Turning around, Gaopeng asks them why they are there. Zhao Yun responded that he made a mistake and caused a commotion by setting off the fire alarm. They had to come to check, and Gaopeng apologized, saying he was too preoccupied with his work to notice the alarm. Later, Zhao Yun switches on the walkie-talkie and informs the authorities that everything is fine in this room, that the fire alarm should be turned off, and that nothing is amiss. Feng Xiu then enters room number 10 and inquires as to what is happening. Zhao Yun responds that this alarm was caused by Gaopeng, who is raising a monster. Other people also try to look into the room, and they talk about how there was a lot of noise and that Gaopeng doesn't have the experience to breed the monster inside the room. From the outside of the room, Feng Xiu thinks this experiment has failed and that this is his last time here, but gradually, something begins to form in the sulfuric acid mixture, and everyone notices that the red river ape is now emerging from the water. He looks completely different. His fingers have changed, and he has turned purplish blue. People believe he is a ghost when he emerges with a massive improvement, and they are terrified and appalled as they see him emerge. Gaping discovers that this creature has been enhanced. The red river ape has finally been upgraded to level 11, which is a very elite tier, and he has emerged into a skull jail ape. His condition is weak, but he is excited, and there are very light attributes of his weakness. Feng Xiu, Li Jin, and Zhao Yang all recognize that this is the red river ape, and that Gaopeng is not just talk, but a real action kid. They are all shocked to see this. Gaopeng is now in shock that this worked, and that his system is so strong that he thinks he can breed and evolve any kind of monster as long as he has enough materials. In the meantime, Gaopeng is taking care of the river ape, who is now transformed into a skull ghoul ape, and he realizes that he has grown larger and that his bone has a lot of mass and it looks like it's made of metal. Li Jin then speaks with Feng Xiu, stating that this is a unique monster that has never been seen before, and that having a ghoul is a very rare trait. Feng Xiu understands that the ghoul attribute is extremely uncommon, and since this isn't the new monster species, he questions how Gaopeng even created it. After hearing these words, Gaopeng turns around and informs Feng Xiu that he has evolved the red river ape into a skull ghoul ape, and as anticipated, he passed the test. Now, the ape has discovered Gaopeng. Now, after examining Gaopeng and wanting to talk to him, the ape tugs his shirt. Gaopeng is now massaging his fingers, gives him a gentle pat, and asks if there is anything he needs to be happy about, adding that he has assisted him in raising his creed. Holding his hand, Gaopeng says this: now that he wants to, the skull ghoul ape is very emotional and gives him a lot of looks. Li Jin now makes the decision that he wants this monster to be his, since it has a very high standard. He currently has an excellent work ethic, so this should be a natural fit for him. Instead of handing it to the staff, Feng Xiu gives it to Gaopeng since they understand that the monster is quite devoted to him and can have him. Li Jin and Zhao Yuan are stunned, wondering how Gaopeng could have it. He even asks himself if this is really necessary for him. Gaopeng is then shocked to learn that he has been given the monster, and Feng Xiu reassures him that although it is not listed, it cannot be argued that anything can be said about his data. They have nothing to lose because it appears that Gaopeng has successfully evolved the ape. Therefore, he asks Gaopeng if he wants to take the monster with him. Although Gaopeng believes it hasn't fully evolved, he discovers that there was a monster of standard grade before it became perfect. All they need to do is wait until level 20. Additionally, the monster will be promoted to a commander tier monster, which is even more exceptional than a level 11 monster once it reaches level 20. Since it's reasonable to assume that this monster is already a commander tier monster, Gaopeng believes he does want to take this. Zhao Yun now believes that this red river ape is not the same red river ape as before, and that it would be detrimental if he didn't accept it since the red river monkey might wish to accompany him. As the ape continues to want to speak with Gaopeng, Li Jin enters and states that he does not believe Gaopeng should accept it, and that the monster should be sent to the association to be awarded to the employee with the highest work ethic. Furthermore, there is no way to determine what progress it has made because it has already undergone 6 experiments. Wang Shu even enters and asserts that it is correct, and that this monster ought to have been vanquished earlier. They all accuse him of cheating, and wonder how someone so young could accomplish something so significant. They are now confronted by Feng Xiu about their belief that Gaopeng has cheated. They claim that it is not that the young guy cheated, but rather that it is so hard that no beginner could have handled such a monster. They also claim that Gaopeng, the young boy, discovered a technique somewhere and accidentally healed the monster, which is how the outcome came about. Feng Xiu then addresses them, asking if the results should be deemed illegitimate if this was merely the product of his luck. They respond that it's not invalid, but success is the ultimate outcome. Therefore, the ape should not be handed to him, but the certificate should. Additionally, he cites the association's tradition, which causes Feng Xiu to burst out laughing. He then claims to have had a great time, and Feng Xiu believes that he wasn't too severe with Li Jin. He informs him that many breeders in this world are extremely pampered and believe they are living their best lives. When he says this, he challenges Li Jin and confronts him to demonstrate his abilities. If they are that strong, then there will always be someone stronger than them. He says this while pointing to Gaopeng. So Gao Peng responds that he's only here to get a certificate, not to get into trouble, and he confronts the opposers that just because he passed, it's because he's young, that he cheated, and that he couldn't, and that just because they couldn't do it doesn't mean he couldn't, and that if he did, it's because he got lucky. Gao Peng addresses them with confidence, stating that they are not only inept, but also lack knowledge, and that because he achieved it, they believe it was impossible. But how could they believe he could cheat? Although in this world, when the Red River ape name appears, it has nothing to do with water. It simply comes from the Red River, which runs next to the natural habitat, and it is not a water attribute monster, just because of the river name in it. And people believe that it is a water-attributed monster, and that this thought was very foolish. Gao Peng informs everyone there about the previous mistakes made with the ape, stating that they had given it a lot of water and yin-type ingredients, which actually made him weak. This is a well-known fact that anyone who has lived this long must be aware of, and it is extremely stupid if they are unaware of this point. Feng Shu responds that although the Red River ape fears the wood-type attribute, the yin-type attribute is really his vulnerability. This was also one of the test points he had to provide when Wang Shu challenged him and rebelled against Gao Peng. Gao Peng goes on to claim that he had to work in a very unusual way since all of the previous experiments with the ape had made him extremely red and had produced bone marrow, which meant that it had to be completely removed from his body. As a result, he lost a lot of energy. He goes on to explain that he gave him black candle grass to boost his strength over the last 3 days, and that there's no need to conceal the materials he used. However, he cautions against experimenting with the ape because it's a very important procedure and the quantity and order of materials are already used. He can tell that he doesn't know what will happen to the monsters that were experimented on, but he can also tell that he doesn't know what will happen to the monsters if they were experimented on in this way. Nevertheless, since the Red River ape is extinct, a child like him won't accept any responsibility. Feng Shu claps his hands and expresses pride in his youthful, fearless boy. He notes that with these skills, obtaining a basic monster breeder certificate would be unfair. Instead, he can be granted an intermediate monster breed certificate. He tells them that he will need to go to Yangjin headquarters to pass the assessment in order to receive the advanced monster breeder certificate, and that he just needs to put in a lot of effort. After Gao Peng thanks the director, Feng Shu, he turns around and becomes enraged with Li Jin and Feng Shu, stating that he is the director and that his director title was merely for show if he couldn't tell who was being dishonest. Feng Shu now wants to find out who was spreading rumors that the Red River ape was only an experimental product. Both Li Jin and Feng Shu are scared because, after hearing all the chaos, people outside believe that Li Jin is strange and always opposes Gao Peng, and that Feng Shu has a mental illness. Zhao Yan raises his hands as he exits the room and informs Feng Shu that Li Jin purposefully included the Red River ape in the test list's name because Feng Shu had bought off Li Jin. The evidence is in the monster transfer records, and they will find out when they examine them. As Wang Shu hits the ground, he realizes that he has used all of his efforts. After hearing this, Feng Shui declares that Li Jin has been sacked from the association and will never be hired again, and that Wang Shu is now disqualified and will not be allowed to take the test for the next 3 years. Because they deserve it, everyone outside is quite thrilled. Gao Peng responds that he needs a favor when Feng Shu offers to bring him to his office for a drink and apologizes for whatever occurred today. Gao Peng is now extremely pleased that he passed the test, obtained the intermediate monster breeder certification, and named the skull cowl ape Dubby because he enjoys sitting in a daze when left alone. He can use the 30 points he receives to improve his score on the college entrance exam, and he also receives a free monster. Gao Peng is welcomed to Feng Shu's office, where he is informed that he can compete in the next monster breeding contest on behalf of Chang'an City. It doesn't matter if you are an elder, middle-aged adult, or even a young teen. Everyone starts from the same place, but since you are so young and have a lot of potential, you should definitely shine. Gao Peng asks which monster breeder tournament is the world one. Feng Shu responds that it is. There are just a few talented breeders in this city, and for the past few years they have never been good, and they never had good results. Given that, only a small number of competitors will get a consolation prize of 10,000 credits, and that it would be extremely self-centered if Gao Peng chose not to participate. Feng Shu wonders if Gao Peng is interested in the international global tournament. With a confident demeanor, Gao Peng abruptly rises from his chair and tells him that it's nothing. But that tremendous power comes with a big responsibility. He then questions whether he truly needs to attend the tournament. People were discussing him and the Skull Ghoul ape on the bus, and they were really interested in hearing about it. While on the bus, he thinks it is extremely difficult for Gao Peng to raise Daji because he is so young and very handsome for his age, but he is also talented, so he believes he can do it. In the bus, Gao Peng keeps thinking about the 10,000 credit prize and what he can do with it, but he is unable to choose what he wants to do. For this reason, he has no choice but to sell Dumpy, the monster ape, and the fact that Daji already eats a lot means the ape would also have a big appetite. The ape follows Gao Peng as he arrives at his destination after they exit the bus. Gao Peng is perplexed as to why the ape threw him over to the side as they were walking. When he asked him, he discovered that the ape was only defending him from an attack. He introduces his monster pet, Daji, and tells the ape that they are a family. He notices that Daji has grown significantly and has become very fat. He then asks Sister Tang what happened to Daji, and she responds that she fed him a lot and made him healthy and extremely strong. Gao Ping is incensed because this is unhealthy. It is overnutrition, and he wonders why being overnourished is referred to as strong and healthy. According to Sister Tang, she fed Daji since he was always extremely thin. The ape and Daji are looking at each other in the meantime, and the ape is rather proud of himself since he is stronger than Daji, to which Gao Peng responds that as a normal student, they gave him a monster who had failed to evolve 6 times. But because of his effort and the monster's cooperation, he became an intermediate monster breeder and even got the certificate and was gifted with the monster he evolved. Sister Tang then turns the conversation from Daji to his exams and asks how his exam went today. He brought it with him since he didn't want to humiliate himself by turning down the monster. Sister Tang is shocked to learn that Gao Peng has earned the intermediate breeder certificate. She asks him if this is true, and he says that it's quite unexpected that he is growing so quickly. She also tells him that monster breeders enjoy such a high status because of how well-versed and well-trained they are in monsters. Sister Tang informs him that they have no defense other than breeding monsters, because monster breeders might be killed with a single gunshot or a sniper. Gao Peng concludes that the only way to protect himself is to become a monster trainer. Sister Tang thus inquires as to whether he would like to become a monster trainer. Sitting in a meditative position, Gao Peng learns about the secret familiar technique, which is a way to transfer damage from one body to another. Although it can only be used on familiar bodies, he understands that mastering this technique will benefit him as he will get additional health and defense. After learning, he feels connected to Dazi by an unseen string. He believes Sister Tang Tang is not as simple as she appears. He was sitting on his sofa when Dazi approached and looked at Gao Peng. Gao Peng comments on Dazi's weight gain, comparing him to a big purple pig. Daisy answers, prompting Gao Peng to request a mirror from Dambi the ape. Gao Peng holds the mirror in front of Dazi, and Dazi appears himself and morphs into a stone, implying that he is surprised to learn that he has become really fat. Gao Peng advises him to exercise and lose weight before upgrading him to a higher level. Daisy dreams of becoming a flying centipede, which irritates Gao Peng. Gao Peng and Sister Tang cross paths in the city. Sister Tang, the beautiful lady, is currently mocking Gao Peng, the charming breeder, for being an intermediate monster breeder. She informs the charming breeder of the circumstances she would confront. She brings him to a site and mentions her past job experience. She brings him to a site and explains that she previously worked with a partner to build a monster breeding agency, but he stole all of her invested money in the monster breeders and abandoned her. Gao Peng remarks that this site isn't as horrible as it appears. It's in the heart of the city on the most luxurious streets, and the rent isn't cheap here either. According to the lady, the region used to be a thriving industry, but with the departure of monster breeders, business has been quiet. Internally, Gao Peng believes Sister Tang is acting strangely, but he follows her upstairs and she shows him the work studio on the 3rd floor. She offers him the best price for the business and 20% of the company share, but it won't affect his studies. He only needs to come here on weekends and the monster breeder job is simple. Gao Peng questioned why she was hiring him when she could have hired 2 monster breeders for the same amount of price. It turns out that the beautiful lady prefers a single employee to a number of them. Sister Tang says even if she does not have monster breeders, she cannot risk destroying the shop's name. Gao Peng believes she has good management powers, and because the studio is in a posh area of town and the pay is so large, he can't dispute it. He wants to wonder whether this is a trap, but Sister Tang has been an orphan for the last 3 years, and if it hadn't been for her care, he would have battled to make ends meet. He subsequently decides to dismiss it and believes that Sister Tang will never hurt him. However, if he gets paid so well and his abilities are not that outstanding, he would have to work hard to make money for her. After much contemplation and thought, he comes to a resolution and informs her that he will listen to her and accept the offer. Tang appreciates his cooperation and she is quite worried inwardly because first things went well. However, she was hiding something from Gao Peng, which is highly suspicious, and she's happy that he didn't find out about it. The staircase opens. They enter the floor, where they meet a really lovely girl with gorgeous round eyes and hair, and Sister Tang is greeted. She presents Gao Peng to the receptionist, Xun Quan. She informs him that she has explained everything to her, and that she will familiarize him with the workplace and his co-workers. She swiftly says her goodbyes and goes to work. Gao Peng is concerned that there are too many suspicious things about this, but decides to stay quiet. The receptionist directs him to register his details. While the receptionist is at her seat, she wonders how young he is. She believes he is a scammer based on his details. Meanwhile, Gao Peng thinks that if he wants to make a lot of money for Sister Tang, he'll have to set a standard price, but because it's different from others, they must obey his directions. His success record is 100%, which will be beneficial for advertising, and at this rate, he could charge the same amount as the majority of breeders. It will not be only about money, but he will take it less, and he will be more knowledgeable. He continues thinking that it would also be insulting to trick the codes, and he would just suffer more. Based on the current price, he will take it and double it 3-fold. The lovely receptionist returns and hands him his registration, which is now complete. She asks whether he truly wants to decide the price at 3 times the average intermediate master breeder, but because he has no prior business experience, he won't have any clients for a while. The studio has a very excellent reputation, Gaopeng is perplexed and wonders what she is trying to convey. Suddenly, someone rushes into the room. He's a tall man with a rigid stance, and he wails that Gaopeng must prove himself worthy of it if he has uttered such words. The receptionist addresses him as Mr. Ma. He replies that even if Gaopeng charges 3 times the customary fee, he will gladly pay tenfold as long as he can heal his familiar. The tall man tells Gaopeng if he successfully promotes his monster, he will give him 10 times more money. Gaopeng replies that even though the man is a big deal, 3 times the amount is enough for him, and he doesn't need 10 times. The tall man is feeling calmer now and asks if he is sure he can take care of his monster pet. Gaopeng says he's not in a hurry and will check on his monster. The tall man believes him and shows him his monster pet, which is very small. It turns out that the small pet is bleeding and it is actually a rat. It's a purple electric rat at level 19. It is electric and has a small injury that is bothering it. Its weakness is mud. Gaopeng sees all this and understands that there is a danger that needs to be fixed. He asks what the rat was fed to become like this. Then the tall man remembers he gave the rat a special food called blood jade gynoderma, thinking it would help it evolve. But it didn't happen, and now he is begging Gaopeng to help his pet. Gaopeng rests his chin on his hand and thinks that the rat is changing and hurting because of its blood and electric traits. He then checks all the materials needed for the upgrade. He follows the rules set by the system, and as long as he has the right materials and meets the requirements, he can successfully upgrade it. The charming guy asks the receptionist to get some items for him: 5 shadow fruits, 5 scarlet marble pits, 50 golden lightning leaves, and 1 crystal from a bloodbath monster. She agrees and goes to get them. While she's gone, Gaopeng asks the tall man if he followed the breeder rules. After that, they plan how to get the materials, but he has to pay for them himself. The tall man says there is no issue as long as the pet rat is okay. Gaopeng tells the rat that he will do his best to help it get better. Later, he takes the rat to the treatment room, where all the supplies are ready. He puts on a glove and an apron. Outside the room, the receptionist and a tall man are looking in through the glass window. They are scared and confused about what is happening. They wonder if this is the way to help the red thing change. They ask him if he is really sure about it. He replies that he is very sure this method can help. Gaopeng calms him down and puts something into a pot of soup that is on the stove. When he adds it, purple energy begins to appear, which is the energy of Yang. He asks if the tall man wants some soup made from his rat. Later, he explains that it was just a joke to make everyone laugh. Gaopeng says this was just a special soup that will help the pet rat get better and heal. It's a special medical bath made just for him. The tall man knows that they need to stay calm. He just needs to stay calm so his pet rat can get better. Even though there are many well-known monster breeders, it's hard to get an appointment with them. Gaopeng, who is just an average monster breeder, doesn't know how to help, and if things go wrong, he thinks he can handle it his own way. After a few minutes, Gaopeng tells the tall man not to worry because the monster is healing quickly. Suddenly, the lid of the container pops open. The monster pet jumps out, making a big mess in the treatment room and throwing things around. They are happy that their monster pet has finally evolved. Gaopeng was able to do this. The monster is now a purple electric blood mouse, which is an elite level 20 creature. It has 2 attributes, electricity and blood. The tall man is lucky to have a perfect creature with 2 attributes. All he needs to do now is train it, and it will become a commander level monster. The tall man apologizes for being rude and doesn't expect to be helped so well. He thanks Gaopeng sincerely and leaves. Goran gives him a receipt for the money spent on his services and for damages to the office, reminding him to pay for everything. Gaopeng gives a list to the pretty receptionist and asks him to send all the items to his house, taking the cost out of his paycheck. The tall man wants Gaopeng to see another pet and asks if he can set up a meeting for tomorrow. He says money won't be a problem and he will pay 3 times for the other pet. Doping responds that it's not about the money, but he has classes and is only free on the weekends. The tall man can't believe that Gaopeng is still in his classes. Gaopeng says that he is a senior in his 3rd year. They are all very surprised to find out that he is still in high school. The receptionist says that Sister Tang spent a lot of money to buy this studio to get rid of all the monster breeders and asked to keep it a secret. She thought that Gaopeng was just being treated as a toy for rich people, but did not expect him to be this capable. Sister Tang Tang is seated on her couch, holding a core crystal between her fingers. She sends the core crystal with her invisible lizard monster to Gaopeng's room and tosses it at the centipede that was beneath his bed. The centipede and skull ghoul ape glance at the core crystal, and Dazi appears and consumes it. The ape is horrified and attempts to stop, but Dazi has completely eaten it and is now experiencing a response. Gaopeng was on his way home with 7.5 kilograms of yin cedar needles and a month's supply of food for Dumby. And he believed that if he continued to upgrade Dumby in this manner, he would reach epic level. He is aware of the epic grade from television and books, and in order to nurture Dumby for the time being, he must consider its next development, followed by his thoughts on how to improve Dazi. He believes that Dazi will develop after at least having 10 electric monster core crystals, which is extremely difficult to get, and even if he does, he will be unable to purchase them. While he was contemplating, he noticed a loud noise coming from his apartment, which sounded like Dumby to him. He thinks something has happened at home and goes to his residence. He unlocks the gate and calls out Dumby's name. He notices the centipede, his monster pet Dazi, lying on the floor. His level was rising after consuming a large amount of Thunder Titan centipede meat and a monster core crystal, indicating that the material belonged to a centipede species and fit the prerequisites for its development, which is currently underway. Gao Peng is taken aback by this, since he doesn't understand how Dazi obtained the core crystal. He thinks about it, and he is aware of how pricey this core is. Then he suddenly recalls Sister Tang Tang, who must have handed it to Dazi. Sister Tang Tang enters at the moment, and Gao Peng asks her if she is the one who fed it to him. She responds that if she had informed him beforehand, he would have rejected the idea, which is why she fed it to Dazi without informing him. She then brings 2 bags full of ingredients, saying that he has earned a couple of days' pay, and how could he splurge like that? So she gives him some materials and leaves. Gao Peng now chastises Dazi for forbidding him from eating everything he catches or what comes to his sight. He realizes he can't leave Dazi in this state since evolution is ongoing and nothing he tries will succeed. He takes out a number of potions, nuts and bolts, and crystals, and then discovers a branch with a purple blossom and several leaves. He considers grinding this purple poison flower to create a potion that will speed up Dazi's evolution. He grinds it and feeds it to Dazi, who begins to exude fumes of red and yellow color. Dazi has now developed. He has big thorns, long legs, and pointed legs. He has now evolved into a level 9 purple-bagged thunder centipede, with the twin attributes of thunder and poison. Gao Peng is aware that evolution has occurred, but he is unaware that Dazi can get such high grades effortlessly. Dumby, on the other hand, is extremely worried about Dazi. Even though Dazi is concerned and irritates him a lot, Dumby is concerned about Dazi, but he discovers that Dazi is simply fatigued. Gao Peng then speaks with Dumby, giving him food to eat and telling him that, despite his evolution, he is still so enormous and gorgeous, and that he is extremely nice, which does not harm him. Dumby grabs the food and eats it, and he immediately shrinks. Dumby is perplexed, but Gao Peng encourages him to be a nice boy and keep eating, and that even though he is done developing, it is best for him to be stabilized before looking for proper resources to evolve again, and he promises him that he would undoubtedly become stronger and larger. Dazi is awake, and he feels powerful and confident. He notices Gao Peng and Dumby lying on the couch, relaxing, so he decides to drape a sheet around him and lie next to him. Sister Tang, his neighbor, glances out the window and notices the 3 of them together, and she is amazed at how rapidly Gao Peng has matured. At Gao Peng's school, in the principal's office, there is a chat between the principal and another guy. The principal is furious, banging his palm on the table and declaring that he cannot allow a monster inside the school since all of the students are still children. They are not properly trained to deal with monsters, and no one else has considered the pupils' safety. The man in front of me is terrified and claims that they already have weapons to defend the country, but in these times, people their age are still considered children. The principal realizes how serious the situation is, and the person in front of him informs him that, despite the fact that the world is evolving and there are new technologies, the school is extremely sluggish, and if this continues, they will be very late, and everything must have gone too far. In Gao Peng's class, one of his pals calls him and asks whether he actually became an intermediate monster breeder, and Gao Peng is astonished to learn how they found out about his being a breeder. He learns that he has made the news, and everyone in the class comes to congratulate him and express their pride that Gao Peng is now a monster breeder. Soon after, one of them expresses sadness for Li Zhigong since his mother was also at the center, and when he returned home, his mother drove him to work extremely hard, making his life difficult. When his buddy informs him that he has a very small request, but that it might be very difficult to fulfill, Gao Peng advises him to keep it to himself. He states that it is already tough, which means that it would only make things more difficult for both of them in the end, to which his friend becomes enraged and fists his hands. The instructor enters, quite upset, and beats the boy's head with paper before instructing everyone to assemble here or return to their seats because they want to make an announcement. The teacher began yelling, so everyone rushed to their seats. The instructor begins to announce that starting immediately, every school in the globe will be undergoing an emergency reform, which will include a new familiar class in your second senior year. At the same time, a new scholarship option has been established for the gifted monster-trained student. This is a new initiative developed together by the Alliance Education Department and the Alliance Military. She goes on to add that those who are talented with monsters can enroll straight in any of the top-ranked colleges or military universities, while those who want to be gifted monster student trainers must visit her after class to sign up. Following the instructor's leaves, following the teacher's announcement, the pupils start debating among themselves. What if the city is in danger? They want to know if something significant is occurring since there is military participation, and they think that it is getting serious. With everything done, the instructor contacts Gao Peng because she has something to say to him. She informs him that she and the principal are quite happy with him because he received his intermediate monster breeding license straight, and that the principal praised him a lot during the meeting. With that, the school would want to send a representative from Gao Peng to deliver a speech to the incoming freshmen. He informs his instructor, Miss Murong, that he does not need to deliver a speech because it is a very high-profile event that does not fit him, but he does want to sign up as a gifted monster student trainer. The teacher marvels how he suddenly had that notion because that's a wonderful path, but she thinks it won't mean anything to him. While staring out the window, she informs him how wonderful his results are, and that if his standard does not slip, he will be eligible for admission to any top-ranked university in the country, as well as others. So, if he truly wanted to be a battle monster trainer, he might use his literary test to get into the military university and enroll in the appropriate degree. After that, Gao Peng thanks Miss Morang for her advice, but he believes it is safer to become a monster trainer, and he plans to become one after he enrolls in a military institution. Because it is so sluggish, he wants to learn more from actual fighting so that he may get stronger. He asks his teacher if he may take both exams at the same time since he refuses to give up on either one. The teacher assures him not to worry, that he may take the exam his own way, with his own ideas, and that the teacher will not stop him. He bows and thanks her as she departs. In the afternoon, all of the pupils are quite confident. They are all going to participate in the audition. From the crowd, a boy calls out to Gao Peng, who swings around to see whether it is Tan Qianjin. He asks Gao Peng about why he was being a monster breeder when his results are simply too good, to which he responds that Tan Qianjin's results are also good. So by that logic, he should not sign up for it either. The ombre-haired youngster says he didn't sign up for it because he has his own dream, and that he used to watch Pocket Monsters, where all of the creatures were great. Since he wants to be the partner of the strongest, he can't pass up this opportunity. Then Gao Peng asks if he would still want to be the partner if the most powerful monster trainer is a man. His friend hears this discouraging thing and simply walks away. Following that, everyone is assembled on the basketball court. They saw the newest armored vehicle for the first time with their own eyes. It was quite harsh and intimidating. The colonel steps up to the platform. The ombre-haired boy wonders if the colonel is their instructor. Except for being a little tougher, he doesn't appear to be very unique. Suddenly, the director looks at him with the corner of his eye. The youngster is shaken to the core from fear. Gao Peng perceives the director as unusual. The colonel director begins his speech and talks to the pupils and tells them that without a strong head and steely determination, they would do nothing more than soil their pants in fear. He tells them that when they see actual white creatures, their legs will shake and they will be unable to run. All of the pupils are enraged and revolt, claiming that they will not be looked down upon, because they have seen monsters before and are not scared of them. With that being said, the colonel orders to bring out a huge monster who looks like a huge white fox and has bluish white eyes. One army man arrives and informs the colonel that the thick wall, which was 10 centimeters of Type 3 armor plate, is ready. The colonel orders the monster to go. Hearing the order, the monster rushed towards the thick plate and demolished it. Gao Peng is surprised that the monster has so much energy to demolish it in one hit only. Seeing this monstrosity in front of them, the colonel says that this is their final opportunity, and this is how monsters are, and how they would confront them, or even a more powerful monster. Sure, if they're terrified and want to leave, they can. Hearing this, several students depart, as if swept away by their excitement. The colonel yells at them to keep their heads down. It's not as though they did anything illegal. He also advises them to study hard since it is a wonderful route, but they are not deserters. They simply need to make a reasonable decision and get out of there so they may return to school. Everyone finally understood what the colonel was saying. As a result, Gao Peng is currently at his apartment, lying on his couch on his face, as the day had been quite taxing for him. Dazi and Dumby appear shortly. They come to him and claim they're hungry. According to the Open, based on the colonel's statements, just 1,200 children from schools around the city enrolled within a month will be remaining, and the rate of elimination is far too high. He notices that the yin cedar needles are absent after he has ceased it completely. He wonders where they've gone since there's only one stick remaining. He questions Dazi and Dumby about what happened to the stick. Dazi claims that Dumpy ate it. He sighs and stares at him, saying that if he wants to eat more, he may just tell him. Dumby listens and simply sits facing the wall. Gao Peng sits and orders 15 kg yin cedar noodles and 5 kg thunderfigs. He knows that Dumby has a good appetite, and if this continues, he will evolve very soon. His major worry right now was Dazi. To advance Dazi, he must feed him 100 kilograms of thunderfigs, which are somewhat less expensive than yin cedar needles at 200 alliance dollars every 500 grams. He is fatigued because he understands feeding his family is getting increasingly tough. He comes to school and notices this plenty of creatures have been inside. It feels like a zoo has sprung up within. He glances at a large pig that is situated at the school entrance. He notices an innocent girl standing close to the pig and asks whether this is her monster pet because it was obstructing the road. The girl is torn because the pig has grown significantly since the last time he ate. The adorable girl stated that when she originally brought it, it did not appear like this, and she had no idea what it was trying to communicate. The army man eventually arrives and inquires as to what is going on. It turns out that he is their instructor. He discovers that a familiar is obstructing the road, and it happens to be a pig. The instructor's monster pet, which is a wolf, follows her orders to resolve this, and goes up to the pig with a threatening glare and a low growl. The pig, who is now scared shitless of the wolf, moves away quickly. The instructor then orders the training to begin quickly, without wasting any time. It was on that day, as a crucial component of their training, They began honing their skills with their familiars. Otherwise, they won't follow their orders, regardless of how powerful their creation becomes. The instructor advises that before they can establish a flawless relationship with their familiar, they must first grasp its behaviors and likes and dislikes. He goes on to say things like for his silver moon wolf, he brought him a black armored peg, and then he had to feed him by himself. He played with it and slept with it every day. And that's how it is. He is now trusted, and this silver moon wolf does what he says. He goes on to explain that his training has given his monster more power and a wider variety of attacks. Next up is Lao Li, who demonstrates the silver moon wolf's proficiency. He orders every pupil to pay close attention. When the monstrous wolf displays the strength of his bite, Gao Peng and Dazi are startled and alarmed. The lecturer explains that familiars can serve many purposes simultaneously. They come in 5 different varieties: aggressive, defensive, supported, therapeutic, and dominant. The green devil wine, for instance, has the ability to be both field controlling and defensive. Additionally, some skills can teach it to be hostile as well, but just for show. The teacher. Permits. Pupils who have already made the decision to follow the training path and come to pick up the training materials. What may Dazi's strength be, Gao Peng thinks? Since they share a blood bond, any harm that Gao Peng sustains will be transmitted to Dazi, and self-defense is becoming increasingly important. However, Hao thinks of a way to strengthen its defense. Yet, he is taken aback by the ape about how it could transport a box that large, indicating that it's most likely an aggressive ape. He gets the notion from looking at the ape. He recalls reading about the hairless mutant ape known as the monster box ape. Since its thinning hair isn't much of a defense, its parents trained it to continuously strike trees with its body after it was born, making the trees incapable of harming it. Instead, it struck the cliffs or rocks. This behavior was repeated by the boxing ape, and its distorted skin hardened. Following all of these events, it developed thick muscles and developed scars that resembled an armor shield. Even if it struck a cliff, it couldn't get hurt right then. Gao Peng believes that by using this training approach, he may raise the strength of Dazi. Thus, he must select his training materials. The material that Gao Peng selected was a large hammer. He approaches Dazi and promises to be nice and to obey him. He promises them that he will never have to endure misery again or see the large hammer again, and that this is the only time he has to be in pain. Daisy attempts to flee because he is afraid. With the hammer in hand, Gao Peng chases after Dazi and eventually captures him. His hands were scratched, but a week later, they were fine. When Gao Peng wakes up in the morning, he decides to sleep a bit longer because he has no training that day. But there was something that woke him up. He woke up as Dazi was hungry. Gao Peng then promises to prepare breakfast for him. He first considers how his strength and speed have improved, and how fortunate he is to have grown one size larger, reaching level 10, so it is not a waste to give him additional food. Dummy has also advanced in level. He waits for his dinner while sitting next to Dazi. Gao Peng is really concerned about providing food for those 2 voracious eaters. Gao Peng's phone was on the table beside the dummy. A call pops, and Dummy's hand moves, and he receives it. On the call, it was Liu Senlin from Blue Shield Protection Company as its general manager. He had given him a call to talk about an agreement that would help him, and requested to speak with him face-to-face about it. Gao Peng enters the monster breeder office, and the receptionist informs him that the guest is waiting for him in the reception area. He rushes to meet the guest. They meet, and the guest believes the person in front of him is Mr. Gao. Gao Peng then introduces the guest as the general manager of Blue Shield Protection Firm, whose name is Liu Senlin, and invites him to his firm to serve as their monster breeder consultant. Then they decide to sit and discuss. Gao Peng wonders why they picked him as the monster breeder consultant. He eventually realizes that despite their superior qualities, he does not understand why he needs to work for such a large organization as Blue Shield Protection Company, or why their boss has come to hunt for him. Mr. Liu feels Gao Peng is quite modest. Mr. Liu claims that there are 2 advanced monster breeders in the city, but they are unable to hire their services. One of them is the Director Chen of the Monster Breeder Association, and his hands are already full from running the association alone. How would he find the time to be a consultant for such a small company as theirs? He informs him that the other guy is Mr. Gu Shenlin, the #1 monster breeder who works for the government as a full-time monster breeder consultant. Other intermediate monster breeders choose Mr. Gao Peng over anybody else. Gao Peng thinks about it and says they can talk about the fees later, but he'd want to add a few conditions. If they agree to this condition, their professional relationship will be unaffected. Gao Peng continues to state that he must attend school Monday through Friday and does not want to be interrupted during these periods in case of an emergency. His second requirement was that he might be a monster breeder consultant but not an exclusive breeder for their firm. He can only ensure that it will not benefit your rivals. Mr. Liu agrees and provides him with a contract that he believes would be appropriate. Gao Peng believes there is something strange about the contract because there are no obligatory criteria, and the yearly pay of 50 alliance credits and commission is included. The commission is 50 alliance credits for each of the company's devil mantises that he needs to develop. He feels this is a straightforward and obvious contract that will benefit him. However, he signs the contract with no limits. The receptionist arrives and announces that Mr. Ma has arrived. Seeing this, Mr. Lee takes his leave and departs, thanking him for his cooperation and looking forward to the future. When Mr. Liu arrives, he speaks on the phone with an uncle and says that Mr. Gao has chosen the non-full-time contract and that there are so many monster breeders, but why should they choose him? The person on the phone says something, and he replies that he understands why. After that, Gao Peng proceeds to the treatment room, where he notices that Mr. Ma has purchased another monster breeder, as previously discussed. He was the Begonia semperflorens sprite from Monster Level 3, which was a typical grade. It was made of wood and was in good shape. It has 2 weaknesses, fire and electricity. To advance to the outstanding grade, he needs 100 drops of lower dew and 100 years of wood essence. He feels the plant is quite attractive and asymmetrical, with burgundy patterns that emit a faint aroma. He questions if he truly wants to evolve this sprite. Mr. Ma claims that in a month there will be a Flower King contest, and he intends to compete for the title. Gao Peng believes that the Flower King contest is not a beauty contest, but that flora are more popular than ghoul monsters due to their medicinal properties, and he cannot believe that this person intends to enter a beauty contest, especially with the sprite he has brought. He believes Mr. Ma is a brat full of envy. The receptionist believes that only women compete in the Flower King event, so it's very questioning as to how a man like him can compete for the crown. The sprite takes Mr. Ma's hand and Mr. Ma says he wants to get things off to a good start since he believes in himself. He wants it to be happy, which is why Gao Peng needs to evolve it in order to win the tournament. Gao Peng reassures him and tells him to leave it to him. He tells him that the costs are quadruple the amount, and the receptionist delivers the gadget where he must swipe his card to make the payment. Gao Peng hands the material list to the receptionist and instructs her to bring over the materials listed. The receptionist agrees and adds that since these are standard supplies, she will go get them right away. She gathers the items as he instructs both of them to wait outside while he works. Gao Peng does something and pulls up an injection-like device, smiling maliciously and telling the spirit to relax, that it would only hurt for a little while, and that he need not be terrified. Mr. Ma and the receptionist observed Gao Peng from behind the door. Mr. Ma then tries to stop Gao Peng, but the receptionist pulls him back and advises him to stay calm for the sake of his spirit. After a minute, Gao Peng permits them to enter, and they can see that the sprite has advanced to level 4. It's an outstanding grade, and everyone is healthy and happy. It turned out to be extremely nice. Mr. Ma then praises Gao Peng and hugs him, to which Gao Peng responds that he does not want to be held like that. He hugs him with great joy. A monster pet was resting on the ground, and it was accompanied by a very gorgeous girl who was disappointed that she had failed to train the monster yet again. They claim that even if they pass the test, they may not make it to the top of the class. However, after graduation, they will most likely have a 9-to-5 job, and who knows whether they will even be able to find work. Everyone agrees that things are going to be difficult right now. The girl is now enraged and ready to try again, no matter what. She pledges that she will find her classmate Gao Peng for this no matter what. In a mountainous place within the forest, there lives an animal that resembles a chipmunk, but with golden markings on his forehead and arms. He has excellent claws and a pretty small face. Within the woods, he feels someone hurl him out, and he is launched into the air before landing on the ground with a massive force. It appears that large, spider-like creatures, spider-like monsters, did this to him. There were massive spiders that flung him through the air. In the city, Gao Peng visits the material shop and places his normal order of 15 kilograms of yin cedar needles. While all this is happening in an important forest a bit far away from the main city, Gao Peng is out shopping for materials and food for his familiars from the shop he frequents. The owner informs him that they are virtually out of stock and only have 5 kilograms remaining. He believes that these needles should never run out because they are available on the outskirts of the city. The shopkeeper informs him that a swarm of spiders appeared out of nowhere and devoured all of the attribute plants in that territory. And now that the land has been shut by the military, he learns that the other creatures dwelling in the forest have become food for them. Following this talk, the owner advises Mr. Gao to leave since he has some clients to attend to, and if there is anything more, he can just look around. Gao Peng believes that this is the first collaboration between the academy and the military, and the second is the security business that came up at his door. The rapid arrival of an unknown spider species has emerged. He believes that something major is about to happen. During all of this, Liu Shenlin contacts Gao Peng and inquires about the vicious gray devil spiders that live in the Black Ember Forest. He discovers that they are nasty gray devil spiders. After that, he arrives at the Blue Shield Protection Company building, where Mr. Liu rushes to him and informs him of an urgent problem. So, to provide him with information, he informs him that these spiders have attacked many resource locations, prompting the government to summon several protection firms as well as commercial organizations to do a study on these spiders and their habitats. He informs him that their firm has also accepted this duty, and that they are going to go live in 3 days, and that they would appreciate it if he could take care of certain devil mantises before they begin their mission. Gao Peng wants to see how the scenario plays out first, and Mr. Liu hopes he can give his all since it is critical to the firm. It is partly due to the fact that monsters have evolved significantly in recent years. Mr. Liu goes on to describe how monster development has been disturbing the government, and how they have realized they cannot battle it alone. They get to the location where they've housed the mantises. Mr. Liu says they will provide enough helpers to support him as long as the results are good. Gao Ping promised the management that he would not let him down. He goes to the chamber with the mantises and stares at them. Manager Liu stares at Gao Peng through the glass, and a person behind him wonders what is going on. To which he responds that Gao Peng is simply looking around and touching things as if he is shopping or something. He's a little concerned because Gao Peng barely looks 20 and wonders whether he can really do it. Mr. Liu becomes enraged when he hears his staff say such things. He advises him to stop talking if he doesn't have anything decent to say. Mr. Liu believes that his entire career is dependent on Gao Peng, and he hopes that Gao Peng proves to be as talented as his uncle claims. Gao Peng now notices that there are 10 mantises that are the largest in size. He tells them that he wants the first 8 mantises from the first row, the 4th mantis from the 4th row, and the 7th mantis from the 4th and 7th mantis. He continues to give a list, and he asks them to prepare a laboratory of 10 sets of primary-level insect enhancers for wood attributes. Crystal nuclei star steel powder with perilla leaf powder. Perilla flower leaf. Hearing this, Mr. Liu rushes to prepare the material according to Gao Peng, and within 10 minutes, he has exactly picked 10 of the best devil mantises in the firm from hundreds of familiars. Mr. Liu realizes that at this speed and accuracy, he is definitely an intermediate-level monster breeder, and he's no way slower than those newly promoted advanced-level monster breeders. He is very happy and satisfied with Gao Peng's work, and a terrifying thing about Gao Peng is that he's not even 20 years old, but he's still extremely talented with the work he's doing. Soon the workers shift all the materials he has demanded and present them to him. Mr. Liu is seen praising Gao Peng, and they learn that the mantis has developed into a Commander Tier 4 winged Jade Devil Mantis, with evolution to perfection. He believes that Gao Peng is truly something as if he is a treasure. Gao Peng now has a stopwatch, and it starts with Dazi sprinting. Gao Peng is there with Daji, and he is testing how fast Dazi has become through a short sprint. After some 7 seconds, he gets to know that Daji is 0.4 seconds faster than the last time. He is very happy about Daji and treats him to his favorite mealworm, which Daji also enjoys. There are people laughing at him while he was practicing with Daji, and some students made fun of him, claiming that Gao Peng was fooling around here during his training. Gao Peng then realizes, as he takes a look at the actions of the instructors, that the instructors are only good to the students who are hard-working, but have no intention of giving any instructions to the bad ones. He thinks this while he is looking at the instructor who is having a conversation with another good student. While he is busy in his thoughts, a girl from behind calls him. She is tall, she has hairs that come up to her brows making them fringe. She praises him for having trained his familiar really well and introduces herself as his classmate, Mu Tieying. The charming guy is shocked that she is so tall. If she were a boy, that would make her appear extremely macho, and he thanks her for the praise. After that, the pretty-haired girl asks him to perform in a group with him. Gao Peng asks why he should group up with her. She informs him that other students are not capable enough and that points will be granted based on group performance. On the other hand, she feels that Gao Peng is a wonderful partner and so wishes to group up with him. Gao Peng asks about her familiarity when she is a little uncomfortable and puts her fingers into her mouth and takes out a lotus seed from her mouth. She places him on the ground and it transforms into a rhino-like creature, which she calls her lotus seed. Gao Peng and Dazi are both astounded by the size of the rhino, and they decide to form a group. However, before they do, the girl informs him that Lotus Seed is really very timid. She used to make way for monsters who were dozens of times smaller than her, but she is more fit to be a defender now. Gao Peng believes that teaming up with her won't be too difficult because 2 of them are at perfect grades, and the rhinoceros is one of them. Daisy is evolving towards a poison-type attack familiar, so having a defender familiar with the group would be ideal. There are quite familiar monsters here, but 99% of them are normal monsters. The pretty tall girl believes it is impossible, and begins to depart after realizing that Gao Peng is taking too long and is hesitant to accept her offer. As she was walking away, Gao Peng called her from behind and said that she had accepted their request to work together. He also said that being kind wasn't an issue and that she could still instruct her later. He acknowledges that conversing with such slackers is draining, but as long as they are doing it, it's okay. When she sees Gao Peng accept her offer, she is overjoyed and gives him a firm handshake. Everyone is gathered in the wide area that runs around the edge of the Black Ember Forest, which is encircled by enormous spiders. Mr. Liu is shown talking to a very lovely woman and stating that these gray devil spiders are terrified of fire based on the most recent information. This time, Captain Song turns out to be the attractive woman he was speaking with before, but the spiders are unaware that their squad specializes in fire attributes. She is quite certain that the devil mantis is a forest killer and will finish the assignment first, as seen by her extremely pleased grin. Monster breeders from private organizations talk among themselves about the possibility that they will fight for the mission rewards on that particular day, which will drain their energy before the mission is completed. According to Captain Song, the manager conveys that there is no rush and that everything should be seen in due time. Since there is no opposition and they claim that they should first offer fire suppression, the army leader declares that the machine should start firing. Everyone focuses on the direction at 3 o'clock and they have begun shooting. When the missile tank arrives and begins firing through the flames, do spiders attempt to retaliate? Mr. Liu believes that they still have the ability to expose their flesh and attempt to frighten them despite all of the fire, which you can describe as a profound adoration. Mr. Liu is aware that the purpose of these fire formations is not only to frighten people, but also to weaken the monsters, which would greatly benefit the government. Because of the school's lack of seriousness, Captain Song is quite upset and very serious. She yells at Liu that they have 8 commander-tiered familiars, but the other organizations have only sent 3 or 4. He tells them that everyone is always hiding something or the other, and it is just that Mr. Liu was very honest and had shown his cards before anything even started. All of a sudden, a giant creature that resembles a yeti appears in between the forests, distracting everyone and making them curious about the sound. When the yeti monster becomes furious, it storms across the forest, causing fright and flight. An eagle monster appears out of nowhere and engages in combat with the yeti creature. The locals there call it the Golden Deity, who is the most powerful protector in the military area, and they are glad that the Golden Deity has kept them safe. Feeling dejected, the yeti turns away and departs after glancing at the Golden Deity. People believed they were going to perish, but the military chief told the monster breeders to hurry up and assemble. The chief, who is annoyed by the monster breeders, is approached by a blue-headed man wearing black sunglasses. He thinks they can handle this on their own, but the blue-headed lamb tells him that they had to take this action to create monster breeders with themselves, since the world altered in an unanticipated violent way. Therefore, it was necessary to involve non-governmental organizations at this time. The non-governmental organization's monster leaders look for spider monsters in the forest, with their monster pets with torchlights. A member of the Captain Song's team approaches her and informs her that their team is wasting their energy since there are too many spider monsters, despite the fact that their families can kill them in a single hit. In order to maintain the formation and advance it, they rearrange the familiars' formations, placing the defense familiars in the front, the support familiars in the middle, and the offense familiars last. Spiders are seen approaching them, and the thorny flower demon is told to use his thorny armor. Captain Song to send the fire, and the hamster, who looks like a creature, spits fire out of his mouth. Captain Song's team realizes that they have defeated 3 spiders in a short period of time with less energy. They hear a noise and move in that direction, which indicates that even though the monsters are in the same configuration, they recognize that the spider monster has to be fought because it has little power and is simply used to reduce springs. Everyone thinks they will prevail if the monster doesn't attack at all. Mr. Liu tells the attackers to target its eyes while the others go for its legs, ensuring that if everyone trusts him, the pay will be distributed fairly. When the fighters hear this, they begin working the attack in the same manner as they ordered, increasing the attack's visibility. When the broodmother begins acting strangely, Captain Song notices that the crystal film that shields the mother's eyes is now down, and feels quite uneasy about it. They all quickly come to understand that the broodmother was not genuinely weak, but rather that she was going through an evolutionary process, and as a result, everyone now experiences physical and auditory suffering due to the emissions from the broodmother's body. The soldiers and other officers were discussing how late it was, and why no one had returned when they noticed that someone was approaching. They were all afraid of who it might be, so the army chief and the soldiers ordered them to take their places and get ready for battle. Mr. Liu, who is on the mantle, yells that it's him and that they shouldn't fire on him. The army rushes to him as he hits the ground and inquires as to why they are returning alone and what has become of the others. Coughing, he pauses to inquire as to whether the authorities sent them there with the intention of killing them. Additionally, he claims that a female spider with less combat prowess had developed into the Lord tier there. He is asked to calm down and explain the issue to the army head. He informs them that during their exploration of the cave, they came upon an evolving female spider. It was enormous, and all they could do was watch as their fellows were killed. They even used their apex familiars to finish their tasks, but they were unable to locate them. Furthermore, he had doubts about the number of those who would survive. He is currently being questioned by the army personnel if these were the findings of their laboratory study. As they were discussing this issue, they noticed that another person had returned from the jungle with his head down and hands on his chest. If the Spider King had followed them there, the army leader inquires. After leaving the area, the man responds that he is unaware of it because they took separate ways to get away. They learn that Lao Li has returned as well. Lao Li apologizes profusely for not being able to defend Dali and Aling. They talk among themselves about how they would have discovered the Spider King sooner, strengthened it, and trained it if they had only known that it was changing into a Lord tier monster. However, they realize that it is worthless and that they no longer need to be concerned about it because the Spider King's development has failed. Gaopeng and Dazi are together on the training pitch. Dazi is being trained by Gaopeng. While he was teaching him, a boy was there with his dog and yelling at the dog to see Dazi's obedience. As he strokes Dazi's head, he reflects and understands that he must transform both Dazi and Dumby into the Lord tier as soon as possible, because doing so would increase the likelihood of hunting successfully in the wild. He would benefit a lot by turning them both into the Lord tier, as his reputation would become well known as a monster breeder. Additionally, he would be able to finish Yang Jin's advanced monster breeder task by then, and he will undoubtedly continue to get stronger as long as he follows that path. He He is aware that level 14 has already been successfully conquered by Dumby. Dazi has not completed all of his training yet has reached level 13. He gets a call from his classmate Mu Tieying, who is holding a book. Gao Peng believes that since they have chosen to work together as a team, they should be adequately prepared. Additionally, he would be able to come up with a plan using this book. He studies the book Mu Tieying delivers. Gao Peng reads it, which contains information about the defense familiars. The book mentions how iron-like will is much more important than physical defense, and also many other important facts. He gives her a pat on the shoulders, thinking of how earnestly and how hard she had been working. Just then, the loudspeakers announce and call for all the students to gather in front of the stage. A group of names of disqualified students is called out by the instructor. When the names of those who qualified and those who were rejected are announced, everyone asks them how they were able to qualify and how they were disqualified, claiming that this was unfair to them. The instructors are expressing that they have been evaluating their performance over the last several weeks, and that it is not up to the level that would have qualified them for it. Using his phone, the teacher dials Xi Jiangyi's name and inquiries as to whether he enjoyed playing. He recalls being always occupied with his phone. The instructor then summons Hula Tang, whom she used to snooze every day. She covers her eyes in embarrassment, and the instructor is very strict, telling them that they can do anything they want starting tomorrow, including sleeping in class or skipping even the most basic training, because there is no point or reason to continue. The actual struggle is the second portion of the training. They would not only have mishaps, but even harm their loved ones if they were forced to continue training with this carefree attitude. Everyone is taken aback as they learn that the second step will involve actual combat. A dispute breaks out between two pupils on how powerful their familiars are, and how they would undoubtedly destroy one another's familiars. Everyone can see them amid this chaos. They begin to quarrel about the yellow-tailed scorpion, claiming it is only a common one and not particularly powerful. When the instructor says that each group must consist of 5 persons, and that their practical instruction will begin shortly, they instantly cease arguing. When they hear this, they both rush to stand next to Gao Peng and tell others to pick someone else because they are already in the same group as Gao Peng. The two individuals who had just been arguing over their monster pets were now praising Gao Peng for wanting to be in a group with him for a very long time. Arriving at Gao Peng's group, the instructor identifies himself as Zhang Renbai. After stating that he is the group's instructor for practical instruction, he asks if there are any volunteers who would like to come up first. They are shown a variety of monsters by their tutor, and they must select one to fight them. When the two men who had previously been fighting saw these creatures, they became terrified and began to wonder if they could ever alter them. When they hear this, the teacher shows them another one, a level 10 hairless blood hyena with an outstanding grade. He may not appear to be hurt, but because it is of high quality, it is superior to the steel-bristled boar and, to top it off, possesses poison resistance. It hurts too. This blood hyena is on Gao Peng's mind. Gao Peng accepts the challenge of volunteering and reporting to the instructor. He decides on the steel spiny boar that their teacher initially showed to them. The boar is anxious, enraged, and furious. A fight breaks out between Dazi and the boar. Gao Peng observes that Dazi is at a disadvantage during their fight, but he also sees that the boar is poisoned and just slightly hurt. Since Dazi has already administered the poison, which causes the boar to suffer severe damage, he believes he has complete control over the situation. The boar had a disadvantage, and it fell so quickly, which astounds everyone, including their own monster companions. The instructor informs them that the boar is poisoned since it has turned green. When the other gang members discover that Dazi is a toxic creature, they are horrified. In addition to congratulating Gao Peng on his centipede's successful completion of the training, the instructor advises him to reduce the venom's maximum dosage, as doing so will make it more difficult to counteract its potency throughout the training. Since Dazi has performed well, he gives him a reward and thanks his instructor. The instructor declares that the boar is still capable of fighting and asks if anyone else would like to go next. According to the man wearing a green vest, he believes his familiar can manage the second round of combat. The fat man and the green sweater man begin arguing about their master pets once more. At that point, the green sweater man orders his yellow-tailed scorpion king to attack the boar. He is so sure that his scorpion will win that, just as he believes it will, it falls and turns out to be poisoned. He is told by Mu Tieying that his scorpion poisoned himself because not all of his familiars notice that his poisonous attacks are resistant to poison. Even though the poison of Dazi is still inside the boar's body, the fat guy begins to laugh because it's hilarious. However, while they are arguing, he notices that his monster dog pet rushes to the boar to fight him. The fatty tries to stop his pet but to no avail, while Mu Tieying has some questions for Gao Peng. The instructor sighs as he considers how difficult this group is to manage. Back at home, Gao Peng thinks it's adorable and really foolish of Dumby to expect that food would just show magically in front of the refrigerator when he opens it. When his phone rings, he realizes it's the Monster Hunting Association, and he assumes it's about the Yinshada needles he needs. When he answers, he learns that the order has been numbered and completed, and he is asked to inspect the items at the association before accepting them. He is now certain that his order has arrived, and he quickly leaves in his shoes to bring it because if it's out of stock, he would have to switch Dazi's evolution methods. He was being seen from a distance by 3 brothers. They were tracking the package from the warehouse association all the way to Gao Peng's house, because they believed he was the one who had spent a lot of money on those yin shada needles, and that they were there to rob him. One of the three brothers is afraid and asks if it is really okay to go this far. They then stealthily enter his flat building at night and bicker with each other on the way up the stairs. When they arrive at his door and attempt to unlock it, Sister Tang, the lovely woman who lives next door to Gao Ping, asks them why they are there since it is already bedtime. The boys are afraid and want to conceal the fact that they are here to steal it, so they offer the excuse that it is too dark in the hallway and they can't see the door. As Sister Tang closes her door, one of the brothers holds the door open and asks if it would be possible for them to get a drink because they are thirsty. They all smirk and exchange a very fishy look as Sister Tang invites them inside their home. As soon as they go inside, one of them shuts the door and responds that he doesn't want to disturb any neighbors. Sister Tang tells them that even if she were disco dancing at home, her neighbors wouldn't be able to hear since her walls are constructed of specialized soundproofing material. When the three brothers notice her monster lizard pet behind her, they become frightened and tremble. One of them pulls out a huge knife and tries to attack Sister Tang, but she has special powers that come from her hands, so she hits his hand and throws the knife on the ground. The other brothers are terrified, and that's when the thief brother throws his monster pet, a tiny one. The three brothers had a venomous porcupine that they threw, and the lizard ate it. They fight with Sister Tang, and the three brothers pull out a bullet rat monster. They believe they are winning, but they are now seeing Sister Tang's true colors. Sister Tang fights with them and ties them in a rope. She later calls Lao Qi and asks him to send some people to her place because she has 3 volunteers ready for them, and he will protect the border until the end. At school, the group gathers again where they see a water bear for the first time, which has a very special characteristic called cryptobiosis. This means that the water bear's metabolic rate will fall to extremely low levels, and Gao Ping believes that in order to contemplate acquiring a third familiar, he should aim to secure a contract with a water bear. Because they are resilient and have been known to survive in outer space, and even after a cataclysm, the resilience of the life force rises to another level where they have a very rare attributes. Despite the fact that this type of familiar has a strong self-protective mechanism, it does not cooperate with Dazi and Dumby, so he decides to forget it. Mu Tang's pet monster is now fighting with the boar. Her pet monster did an excellent job of fighting, but she became very enthusiastic and was inching closer to where they were fighting. This is not safe because she might hurt herself during the fight while she is nearby. Thus, the instructor tells her to calm down and return while such a massive familiar is battling. At that moment, Zhao Peng receives a call from manager Liu, who asked him whether he was free today. Gao Peng believes it's a little flattering because Mr. Liu invited him out wherever he wanted, to see his other friends. He reflects on how much loss the company experienced during the last forest tragedy, and how hard they are working to win over the skilled master breeder. After thinking a lot, he informs Mr. Liu that they should meet outside the school gate after his courses have ended. Mr. Liu arrives at the school gate. In his skull, he has his daughter, who attends the same school. She kept a small cat as her monster pet. Mr. Liu asks if he could glance at the familiar. He looks back and notices a cat familiar, which is an unusual sight. It has the monster trait of wood and a vulnerability to water. However, he assures his daughter that he would be available on weekends, and that she may find him there. During this talk, Mr. Liu leaves his daughter off at home and informs us that he needs to do something with Gao Peng. Assuming an arrangement has been accessed, his daughter departs. Gao Peng believes that if this was a planned gathering for him to see his friends, he would not send his daughter home. He feels things are becoming crazier by the minute, and out of curiosity, he asks Mr. Liu about his pals, but Mr. Liu keeps it a secret, telling him that he will find out when they reach their destination. They arrive at a magnificent location that has been furnished with a landscape garden. Gao Peng glances around and concludes that the buddies Mr. Liu is talking about are not as easy as he believes. They enter a large room that already includes 5 individuals, excluding them both. Mr. Liu brings Gao Peng to Captain Song and Captain Jiang Gu. Looking at Gao Peng, Captain Jiang Gu comments that he did not anticipate a youngster like Gao Peng to be acquired here. Everyone in the room represented the Monster Hunter squad. Everyone staring at Gao Peng made him feel quite uncomfortable. While they were going to settle down, Captain Jiang Gu inquired about Gao Peng's health. Captain Song stops and urges him to stop scaring Gao Ping because she doesn't want to destroy her image by harassing a pupil. To calm the situation, Mr. Liu tells them that it was his fault for not informing Gao Ping about the Monster Hunter team's existence. Captain Jiang Gu invites Gao Peng to join him for a drink and mentions that he wants to counsel him on something. The others invite him to join them, but it turns out they are only there to learn from Gao Ping. He detects rage in their remarks, and it is clear to him that this is not an ordinary lunch. With all his thoughts, Mr. Liu hands him a drink that appears dubious. Mr. Jiang Gu lays down his chopsticks and says he wants to be honest with Gao Ping. He compliments Gao Peng on his exceptional abilities and wonders if he's as excellent as everyone says. Gao Peng informs him that if they want his assistance, they may contact their firm, but Captain Gu disputes this, claiming that if he is friends with Mr. Liu, he is also friends with him, and friends are never distant. They believe Gao Peng is unsophisticated, while Captain Song asks that Gao Peng look at some familiars she possesses. He was now certain that they were not just looking for a meal, but also to have him look at familiars and assist them. After a lot of thought, he attempts to politely refuse their offer, claiming that his talents are just inadequate, and that he will be unable to endure the duties and even mishaps. With this, Mr. Liu offers to send Gao Peng back, but he has already ordered a cab. Everyone was unhappy with him when he departed, but they tried to ignore it because he was a child. Mr. Liu becomes aware that everyone is dissatisfied and that he has angered both parties. The others go back to eat, and Mr. Jianggu shows up. He says that since he has helped in souring Gao Peng's relationship with other groups, the debt he had from the Dark Ember Forest is now repaid. Mr. Liu says that since they are friends, they should continue helping each other out. Captain Jianggu does not agree, and says they have no more karmic debt between them, since he has already repaid the debt he owes Liu. Captain Jianggu knows that Mr. Liu had tried to trick Gao Peng, and does not want that to happen to him as well. After Gao Peng reaches home, Dazi glances at him switching on the television. He sees that the blue magic monster familiar gene enhancement serum was discovered to have negative side effects, resulting in numerous malignant mutations in Japan. The United Dragons Group announced the recall of the enhancement serum and stated that anyone who purchased it may return it and receive a full refund minus the service charge. He discovers that the scientists are demonstrating how uncontrolled the enhancement is and how they want everyone to oppose it. Mr. Liu calls Gao Peng and apologizes, saying he should have warned him about them previously. While Mr. Liu was discussing how the captains had upset both of them, Gao Peng hung up the phone without letting him finish. He actually does not blame anyone for making him seem foolish, but he undoubtedly blames himself for not having enough strength. And for the time being, he can do nothing but act according to the rules. Meanwhile, on the news, they are announcing that the first Yangcheng City Dog King competence contest ended successfully yesterday, and the participants in the competition came from Yangcheng Rongcheng and Pengcheng. 21-year-old genius monster breeder Han Ning had won the championships as the first Yangcheng Dog King. As reported, Han Ning was still a college student, a junior at the Yangcheng Institute of Technology. Gao Peng realizes that in only 3 years, Han Ning had trained his familiar to reach the commander level and perfect grade, and must be one of the top monster trainers. However, he also knows that it will not take long for him to catch up. Over in the Fei Peng familiar studio, he has concocted a mixture of various materials and has also brought along Dumby. After putting it through a food processor and mixing it with some other chemicals, he hands it over to Dumby, telling him to drink this medicine. Just then, Zhao Yu, who had previously been told by Goa Peng to come over whenever she needs, walked into the studio with 2 of her friends. One of them is joking around saying that he must look quite old if he was around Zhao Yu's age. They bicker and tease each other along the way to the reception. At the reception, Xun Chen greets the guests and asks them if they have any appointments scheduled with them. The girls look around and ask if they really need an appointment considering the studio looks way too empty. Quan says that if they do not have an appointment set up, then she can contact her boss to set up a time. Zhao Yu remembers that her dad had told her that Uncle Gao's monster breeding abilities were extremely impressive and had even called Gao Ping the #1 genius in Chang'an. However, due to the extremely high fees, he just did not seem to have many customers. Suddenly, there is a loud scream and a roar that is heard from behind a closed door. The 2 girls are taken aback and their bodies feel weak and pained. Even the cat familiar that one of them is holding is terrified of the roar. It is so scary that they cannot even breathe. All of a sudden, the doors burst open. A monstrous purple-hued familiar with sickly translucent skin walks out of the smoke when the door opens. It is apparently a skull ghoul ape at level 16 having an epic grade. It had even received a special characteristic called a blood thread heart. Gao Peng is absolutely amazed and happy that Dumby has evolved successfully and immediately checks the special characteristics. The characteristic has primarily 2 effects. Firstly, it can consume a certain amount of blood threads in order to form a blood thread heart. When it possesses a blood thread heart, all aspects of the skill ghoul ape would strengthen. Secondly, if he consciously activates the blood thread heart, it will trigger heart resonance. Through this, he can control the beating of hearts. It is a very powerful special characteristic, and Gao Peng knows that this will boost his combat abilities a lot. However, it will not be convenient to take him out like that. Thus he walks out of the room and asks Quan to find something to cover Dumby up. Meanwhile, Quan is simply staring at him with a flabbergasted expression. It was absolutely shocking that he had managed to evolve yet another familiar in such a short time. Just then, Zhao Yu calls out his name and Gao Peng notices her. He remembers that she is Manager Lu's daughter, and that he had promised to take a look at her familiar once. He wonders if he had sent his daughter there to test him after Gao Peng had hung up on him last time on their call. Manager Lu really was a crafty sly fox after all. However, Gao Peng notices that aside from the cat familiar of Zhao Yu, her friend's familiar looks much more interesting. It was like a jellyfish moving through the air as if it were the sea. Just then, Zhao Yu speaks up and says that she hopes he can have a look at her familiar. Gao Peng smiles and tells her to not call him uncle, and that he was not used to such formality since they were of the same age after all. Gao Peng had already realized at this point that Lu Zhao Yu did not know what a crafty fox her father was, and decided that he should not bully a young girl just because of her father's actions. He then tells them that as usual he will first charge them, and after they have paid, he will have a look at their familiar. Since it was an elite normal mint cat, according to his standard rates, it would be 60 credits. However, since she was Mr. Lu's daughter, he can ensure that the upgrading materials will be on him and free. She thanks him profusely on hearing that, but just then, he asks her where the cat has gone, only to find that it is hiding in a corner, frightened by Dumby. Seeing Zhao Yu walking over, the cat makes an adorable face, jumps onto her lap, and starts touching her bosom. Both Gao Peng and her friends wonder just how perverted the cat is. Gao Peng then turns to one of them and asks her where she had bought the jellyfish. She is surprised that he is interested in this type of pet, and explains that it is not really a familiar, but just a little pet at best. She mostly used to take its help as a portable purse. Saying so, she puts her own purse into its mouth and it disappears immediately. The jellyfish is surprisingly able to store things inside the extra-dimensional space in its own body. She explains that the levitating jellyfish was originally a speciality of Pengcheng City. However, a wholesaler who had imported a bunch of them recently was selling them at Wook Square. Gao Peng has firmly decided that he will be using this type of familiar as the third one for his party. Thus he travels to Wook Square where two people are trying to sell the familiars, calling them the newest fashionable unique purse, a flying purse. The jellyfish are extremely cute, and the ones most attracted by the offer are girls. Most of the girls are asking their boyfriends and partners beside them to buy the familiars for them. Gao Peng also arrives and asks one of the sellers to show him the levitating jellyfish. The man simply hands him one of the. However, Gao Peng shakes his head and says that he wants to see all of them, and not just one, because he will be picking the one he prefers himself. The seller leads him inside a big building and shows him a lot of caged levitating jellyfish. He says that according to the materials, during the cataclysm, a group of jellyfish were infected and mutated by space power. Over the next few years, they settled and thrived in that area. Later, because the other monsters were preying on them, they had almost gone extinct. Gao Peng realizes that the species might even be the weakest space monster. The seller agrees, saying that although it is a space monster, other than floating in the air and opening a small extra-dimensional space inside its body, the levitating jellyfish is incapable of attacking, and if it was not pretty or looked distasteful, it would have already gone extinct long back. Gao Peng realizes that even being distasteful was a part of its luck, because it would have been devoured by the masses otherwise. Looking around, he finally finds a jellyfish that catches his interest and feels much different from the rest. The others are just floating around quietly, but that one seemed the most active. He asks the seller how much he will take for that specific fish. The seller smiles, saying he has a good eyes, and explains that that fish was a rare mutant breed and was a perfect grade levitating jellyfish kind with a speed mutation. Thus, he proposes selling it at 100 alliance credits. Gao Peng smiles and states that honesty is important in business, and calling it a jellyfish just because of a little mutation was just exaggeration. He says that he will give 50 alliance credits for the jellyfish. The seller immediately accepts it and says that since he sees a fellow businessman in Gao Peng, he will discount it for him. Gao Peng just wonders how shameless he is that he did not even hesitate, and realizes that the seller would earn something even if the jellyfish sold at 50. The seller tells him to let any friends know if they want to buy jellyfish, and that he will give them a discount if they are referred by him. Gao Peng smiles at the greedy nature, but does not regret, as he had gained a lot from this trip. His team of familiars would finally be complete with the addition of this jellyfish. Looking at the jellyfish as he brings him back home, he wonders if he should name it Silly. Back at home, he opens the door and Dazi excitedly gets up from the floor, eager to see Gao Peng. Meanwhile, Gao Peng introduces the jellyfish as the newest member of their family, absolutely shocking Dazi. Dazi becomes jealous and runs off into another room and slams the door in his face after cursing him out. Gao Peng wonders just when it had learnt to become so jealous. Gao Peng is now angry and cracks his knuckles, thinking of how he is going to discipline Dazi. He goes over and starts whispering through the door that he had bought Dazi his favorite bread mealworms and also poison arrow worms, mealworms, and silver leaves. Further, he had also posted a notice to pay a high price for an Electric Commander Monster Core crystal to help him level up. He had posted the price at 301 credit points. A whole extra credit point more than the average price is enough to feed a family for their entire lives. Daza, who had been hearing about these amazing snacks and had been getting tempted to come out the entire time, finally concedes. He opens the door with a salivating mouth as Gao Peng asks with a smile if he wants to eat. Dazi replies that he really does. But just then, Gao Peng raises the food packet high up and out of reach as he refuses to give it to Dazi. This is the punishment for slamming the door in Gao Peng's face. Dazi struggles to reach the packet, asking it to be given to him as he curses the living hell out of Gao Peng for being a meanie. Meanwhile, Dumby and Silly are staring at each other, curious on seeing a new kind of life. Gao Peng has just finished beating up Dazi and is walking back to the table thinking that he cannot go a day without beating Dazi. Otherwise, his attitude would soar to the skies. As of now, Gao Peng assumes that Silly's level is not high, so his mental strength is probably enough. Thus, he wants to try establishing a blood contract when possible. Extending his hand towards the glass container in which Silly was kept, he feels his consciousness. He realizes that Silly's mental space is smaller and weaker than Dazi's was in the beginning. Not to mention, Silly had quite the emotional insecurities. If he makes the blood contract now, it will just feel like a suspicious uncle kidnapping a little kid. He realizes he will need to stay with Silly for a longer time to lower its guard and further develop their friendship. Thus, he decides that he will bring Silly to his school the next day to enhance their relationship. The next day, everyone is simply weirded out on seeing Gao Ping. This is because he is now wearing Silly like a hat on his head. It also looks pretty ugly instead of looking cute since its tentacles are wrapped under his chin. He sees Mu Tieying and pulls a cold bottle of mineral water to offer her. She stammers out a refusal before asking just what was up with his hat. He tells her that it is not a hat, but a levitating jellyfish, a space familiar. Mu Tieying realizes that it really is so, and says she had heard about it having a timid personality. Ignoring the small talk, she asks him if he had seen the monster for battle training that day. He says yes, and turns towards a cage holding a purple metal scorpion inside. It seems the test that day will be a tough one. She asks him if he is going to be the first to challenge it today again. Just then, the people around started whispering and complaining that it looked like Gao Ping would take the extra points for the first win again that day. They cannot even do anything because Gao Ping truly was strong and had the highest win rate among them. Some of them were just happy to get some points by analyzing his moves. Hearing all this, Gao Peng simply speaks out loud and says that he will leave the opportunity to the other that day, since he should not always be the first to challenge the monster, and that will not be fair to the others too. They all are shocked by that, as most are timid to stand out and be the first ones to go. Suddenly, a short student wearing glasses speaks up that since Gao Peng is willing to give up the chance to get the first win, he would like to avail it. The monster he has tamed as his pet is a dragon chicken. Gao Peng knows that it is the only elite tier familiar amongst them other than Dazi, and it is level 11. But despite its grade being only normal, it is enough to test the abilities of the purple metal scorpion. Thinking so, he looks at Dazi wanting to tell him to pay attention to the fight, but notices that Dazi is busy salivating as he looks at a different small-sized familiar lying on the ground. Gao Ping is exasperated at his gluttony and asks just what the hell he is looking at. He hits Dazi's head and tells him to pay attention to the purple metal scorpion's attack patterns, since he will be going up to fight the scorpion next. The instructor signals the start of the match, and the scorpion rushes towards the chicken. Barely dodging an attack of the scorpion, the dragon chicken jumps into the air and bares its claws at the scorpion. However, the scorpion easily grabs the chicken's claws and pulls him in, stinging him with his tail. Seeing the precarious situation, the student feels worried. However, the instructor says that the purple metal scorpion is fortunately not venomous, otherwise one attack would have knocked the chicken out. He was actually lucky that the chicken dragon was tough enough. Only the sharp barb at the end of the scorpion's tail had managed to pierce through its flesh. The rest of the round tail segment was not hard enough to deal any greater damage. Just then, there is a red glint in the chicken's eyes as it delivers a powerful peck at the scorpion's body, piercing through its tough exoskeleton. While the student who is the chicken's master rejoices, saying that he will be winning, Gao Peng has other views and can see that the fight is not over yet. Although the chicken has pecked through the scorpion's skin, the scorpion has not given up and swings its limbs and hits the chicken's legs, gravely injuring it. However, if even that was not enough, the scorpion also hits it directly in the balls, leaving the poor chicken in tears as the audience grabs their crotches, feeling equivalent pain just from the sight of it. Before the scorpion can do any more damage, the instructor glares, and the white wolf monster of his, in turn, glares at the scorpion, leaving it scared and unable to proceed. Meanwhile, the chicken takes this chance to run off crying as he holds onto his cracked eggs. Seeing the chicken master running away after the chicken, the instructor sighs and turns towards the students. He says that he knew some of them had been unhappy lately because Gao Peng's purple-backed thunder centipede was always the first to challenge the new monsters. The students must have been thinking that the instructor was biased and was looking down on them. He asks them if they still have such thoughts. The others simply back off and stammer out, saying that they do not mind at all, and that the top students with good grades should of course go first. The instructor satisfactorily turns to Gao Peng, who smiles and sends forth his centipede. Inside the cage, Dazi and the scorpion stare each other down. Mu Tiying feels worried because the purple metal scorpion should not act this afraid with its skill set. He wonders if the scorpion has some ace up its sleeve. However, he has no choice but to just trust in Dazi and hope he will do well. The scorpion decides to take the initiative and attacks Dazi with its claw, which Dazi effortlessly dodges. However, that is not enough, and the scorpion uses his stinger to attack immediately after. But Dazi is unaffected by the stinger, and immediately counterattacks with a sweep of his own tail, finally landing a slash on the scorpion that weakens it. To end things, Dazi wraps its body around the scorpion, incapacitating it, and thus securing victory. Mu Tieying is fascinated by Gao Peng's familiar, and also his faith in it, because even though Dazi had been in a dangerous spot for a moment there, Gao Peng had not been worried in the least. He smiles and bluffs that everything was within his expectations, but only he himself knows about how nervous he had been at those crucial moments. One of the instructing staff requests Gao Peng to call his familiar back, as they did not have many monsters that can be used as training opponents. Gao Peng is confused until he finally turns around and sees to his horror that the gluttonous bastard of a centipede was chewing on the scorpion happily like it was his meal. The audience see the vicious way in which Dazi was acting with the scorpion, and wonder if it is not completely tamed yet, and whether they were safe or not. Gao Peng does not get mad and merely whistles to call for Dazi, who promptly jogs up to him. Gao Peng remarks how he keeps eating weird things and is worried he might get a stomachache. He asks if the nutritious and delicious mealworm is not good enough. The other students around him are spooked out by how he happily wipes the scorpion blood off of Dazi's face and call him arrogant. Mu Tieying hears all this and asks Gao Peng not to mind those idiots. However, Gao Peng is not feeling very generous at the moment. He speaks in a low but steady voice, loud enough for everyone to hear, that at the moment all of them were battling monsters that are held in cages protected by the instructor and the Silver Moon Wolf, and thus have the heart to sympathize with the monsters. However, when they are out in the wilderness, they will not have such a luxury, and the monsters will not care about them at all. He firmly declares that they are here to learn how to fight and not to have a tea party, and anyone with that kind of half-hearted learning attitude should just drop out early. Before the disgruntled students can retaliate, their instructor steps in and remarks that Gao Peng had indeed spoken the truth. And since the atmosphere felt right, he had decided that it would be a good time to announce important news. He tells them that they are more or less done with basic training, and can henceforth apply to the outfield training base. The duration of the training will be 1 week, and the instructor has already arranged it with the school to allow for the participating students' absence. The instructor also tells them to first discuss it with their parents when they return home, and informs them of the 5 Alliance credit fee. Some of them are very excited to hear that after so long they finally get to engage in a real battle, while a few others are worried and anxious as their basic training is still not up to par. Hearing that there would be an outfield training base, Gao Peng realized that the government was really not sparing any expenses on the training program. Some of the students, however, are a bit taken aback by the fee requirement and ask if they cannot attend the training for free. The instructor tells them that they can simply choose not to go, or they can look for a privately owned outfield training base. Students with more experience tell the others that privately owned training bases cost 20 whole credits for a mere week of training, and that is just the entrance fee. It has to be topped up later to use various equipment. The students who hear this feel a bit down and decide that they will have to just borrow some from their parents after all. The instructor sees their faces and gives them further information that other than paying on their own, there is another way. That is to sign a contract with the military where all their training fee will be covered by the Alliance military in exchange for the students having to serve in the military for 8 years, after which they can freely leave. In case the contractee manages to get into military school too, then the time they spend studying in military school will count towards the 8 years. As they hear this, Mu Tieying remarks that although 5 credits is not a big sum, it definitely was not a small one either, especially for the average family. Gao Peng calls the government smart because the students are not forced but given a choice to pay or serve in the military. But either way, in the end, it will be the government who benefits. The instructor then announces one last important fact: if they apply, then they will need to get death insurance as well. One of the students raises her hand and asks if she will die getting it. The instructor smiles and explains that if they sign up for death insurance, it does not mean that they will die, but if they continue to maintain that level of intelligence henceforth, then they probably will. He explains that a monster trainer cadet's college examinations are different from other examinations, so it is best that they all make the best out of this special training opportunity. As everyone is discussing future actions to take, Mu Tieying bumps fists with Gao Peng as they decide to go there together the next day. A bus carrying the students who decided to participate in the outfield training is speeding down a dirt path escorted by a jeep. The different students are busy doing their own things, mostly admiring the beauty of the mountains and the various flowers and families available in the wild. All of a sudden, the bus screeches and the students experience a jerk as they fail to keep their balance. The driver just smiles, looks back, and apologizes for not seeing a stone on the road and applying sudden brakes. He thinks that, unlike the others, Gao Peng is unaffected by this, but feels a bit annoyed that the old man was pulling such tricks because the students were being noisy. He remembers how he had gone to talk with Sister Tang that morning regarding his trip, but she was nowhere to be found. He had knocked on her door with no reply and had even tried calling her, but to no avail. He knows that she is not so weak that anything serious will have happened to her, so he guesses it might be related to the secret that she could not tell him about. Suddenly the bus jerks to a stop again, and this time the force is large enough to even disorient Gao Peng. When the students start cursing the driver again, he sincerely tells them that he is sorry, and it was not deliberate this time. Looking forward, they realize that they have finally reached the outfield training base. All they can see are huge mountains, but in the V-shaped valley formed between 2 small peaks lay the base. After walking out, they are lined up and stand close to each other. An army lieutenant informs them that the valley behind him is their outfield training base, where every inch of the valley has been swept clean. Thus, other than normal and elite tier monsters, there will be no traces of any commander tier monsters. Further, the ID watches that they have issued the students have GPS and emergency rescue facilities installed. The mission of the participants would be to survive inside for a week. There is no backing out once this training begins, otherwise it will be considered as forfeiting the entire training. One of the students asks if there are fixed supply points inside the training base. The lieutenant says that there are a few safe houses in the valley which are made out of a special metal, and only commander tier and higher monsters would be able to break through the safe house, and there will also be a certain amount of food in each safe house. Thus, it will not be entirely impossible for the inexperienced students to survive in the valley for 7 days, and will solely depend on how they choose to live. Once it is time, the gates are opened, and they all step in through it, going into the wilderness. The instructors shout through loud microphones and tell them to hurry up and not to worry because even if they get eaten by monsters, the soldiers will be able to find them using the GPS in the watch. What would even be left of them if they were found after being eaten? Sigh. While everyone rushes to head deeper into the forest, Gao Ping is staring at a bird on the branch of a tree when Mu Tianying approaches him to ask what he is up to. He looks up and points to the sparrow. Gao Ping explains that it is a type of sparrow that usually flocks towards wet habitats, like a nearby body of water, and it is extremely sensitive to the presence of rain. These sparrows usually fly to areas experiencing rain, hence are named rain sparrows. Mu Tianying recalls that the weather forecast towers in most cities would raise rain sparrows. They have very weak offensive capabilities, but they are very fast. Suddenly, the sparrow looks up towards the sky and flies away. Gao Peng is lost in thought while remarking that one really should go outdoors more often because the wilderness, in contrast to the dull city, was a thriving environment and practically a treasure trove of monsters. Mu Tianying is impressed that while other people were simply rushing into the valley to find shelter, Gao Peng was observing the scenery. She realizes that people's states of mind really do differ a lot. Gao Peng looks back with a smile and shakes his head, saying that he was just waiting here for the people over there to go first, so the crowd clears. They chuckle together and then head out. However, a thought still lingers in Gao Peng's mind. It is his belief that he had seen a figure by the trees. Ignoring that, the first day passes fast as Gao Peng and Mu Tianying spend time together exploring the wilderness near the entrance and finding various interesting familiar species. Suddenly she spots a metal hut camouflage in green at a distance. They assume it must be a safe house and thus head towards it. There were not many beds in the safe house, which essentially meant that the instructors did not want to flock them together in groups. Gao Peng explains that there are no commander tier monsters within the valley, and less than 5% of all the monsters there are elite tier. If students were allowed to even flock together, that would defeat the purpose of training itself. Observing things a bit more closely, he notices that each bed has 5 boxes of compressed biscuits and 10 bottles of mineral water. With careful rationing, the food and water given would definitely last a person for an entire week. This meant that the military had even taken the students' skill set into account. If they need to fight monsters and search for food at the same time, there would definitely be casualties. Turning back, Gao Peng is surprised to see Mu Tianying in a futuristic, cool-looking high-tech bodysuit, asking him if he was not going to change into them. Looking at his confusion, she explains that there are still some small mosquito species that are quite poisonous in the jungle, and being bitten by them will feel horrible. Gao Peng awkwardly smiles, looking at the suit again, and says that he is fine and he will just put on some medicinal herbs. Trying to divert the topic, he says that they should take a look around the area first. It would be best if they could hunt something down, since he does not want to eat only compressed biscuits for a week. Now that they have a safe house, they can use the lotus seed's original body size to clear the way, and whenever any problems arose, they could just return to the safe house to take refuge. She seems fascinated that he has thought so far ahead and eagerly follows him as they go out to hunt. He says that they will first search for a water source, as the area around it can be used as a natural hunting ground. Mu Tianying agrees, but soon complains that the fragrance of the flowers and the vegetation is just too thick. Not to mention it also carries a hint of the smell of decaying leaves, making her dizzy. She is about to lean into a tree for support, when Gao Peng grabs her hand and tells her to quietly tell Lotus Seed to ram into the nearby tree with as much power as possible. Although she does not notice anything special about the tree, she trusts Gao Peng's judgment and orders Lotus Seed to carry out the task. As if rams into the tree with full force, a tiny snake that had been camouflaged on a branch is revealed. It falls to the ground with a thud, surprising Mu Tianying, who wonders just what kind of a monster it was for it to have been able to camouflage so well. Gao Peng explains that a green tree snake is a green snake that can turn into a branch. The flesh of this type of snake contains trace amounts of poison that monsters can eat but humans cannot. However, Gao Peng, who had established a blood contract with Dazi, could transfer any harm that happened to him to Dazi. But since it was poison resistant, it would not be harmed either. Thus, theoretically, it should be fine for him to eat the snake because this meant that he had a form of poison resistance. Just then, he thinks he heard something jumping from a branch, but before he can check, Mu Tianying...
I think you kinda like this video, so just subscribe and like.